footwork impeccable. We dine well here in Camelot, we eat ham and jam and spam a lot.
I have no doubt that I picked the right person to join me as the next Vice President of the United States of America, and that's Senator Kamala Harris.
Joe Biden kept a lid on who he would choose to help make Trump's first term his last hurrah. But now he's giving everyone the good news. It's Kamala.
I am incredibly honored.
Sorry, I have to take a breath. It's Richard, thank you. It's Richard. Richard Harris at the end of Camelot. And there's a little boy and King Arthur, and his forces have been defeated. And he says to the little boy, "Go run, run, run. Go run, boy. Run through the world and tell them there once was a place called Camelot." It's a wonderful moment, and only somebody who's got a deep spirit like Richard could have given what he gave.
That once there was a fleet.
People like to believe in fairy tales.
Called Camelot.
Don't let it be forgot that for one brief, shining moment, there was a Camelot. There won't be another Camelot. Not another Camelot.
If ever I would leave you, it wouldn't be in summer. Seeing you in summer, I never would go.
Hello and welcome back to...
I didn't know you could have a career as a baritone, Adam. Oh my gosh.
She served.
She's 30 now, so
She's
you know
30.
the voice is dropping finally.
Yeah, my congrats to my balls dropping. Shout out to my balls. Welcome back. Our Molly is doing well. We're not even gonna discuss it. I could talk about how it's May 30th.
The dissertation, yeah.
But we don't know what's going on.
The dissertation is turning in soon at the time we're recording, and the outcome of that will have happened by the time this releases, and we don't want to speculate. We're not in a place to speculate.
We're not in a place to speculate.
Not today.
Not today. So RJ, I'll pivot to you. I don't really ever ask how you are, mostly because I already know.
Because I wake up and see how you are.
Yeah. Anything you want to tell the dear readers?
No.
Okay.
Molly, I will tell you this. I did make dinner tonight, and I gave the bowl of food to Adam. He took
okay, hold on.
No, I know.
Okay.
Immediately.
I'm already on the
facts
defense.
are disputed.
He eats 2 bites and he goes, "I don't like this." And then I cried.
No.
I left.
Why did I say I didn't like it?
He said, "You don't know how to cook." No. There was no seasoning on the prepackaged Trader Joe's frozen food item that we cooked. So this is more a note to Trader Joe's. If you're not going to pre-season, write it on the front.
Right.
On the ingredients, just add salt and pepper.
Or just add Old Bay, which is what I needed.
It was a seafood paella, which you would assume is packed with all kinds of flavor because it's literally red. So,
Yeah.
no, very
And
bland.
a person as white as Adam saying that he doesn't like it because there's no seasoning. I mean,
Yeah.
come on, Trader Joe's.
It just goes to
He's
show
had
how
enough.
hard RJ has worked to get me to this point.
Yeah. When Adam
He's
had his
finally had
first,
a good influence.
yes, when Adam had his first like seasoned food when he met me in college, it was
Yeah.
truly life changing.
The first time I ever put more than 3 granules of salt on an item truly rocked my world.
Rocked my world.
I feel like the only food item you've genuinely introduced me to, RJ, is chicken and waffles, which is
Oh yes, because
not
we
a
would
Filipino thing. as far as I
not
know.
Filipino, but we
Very
used to we would make them at our dining hall.
Yeah, that was always a good time.
And
I have to tell you, I'm sorry to break this to you, but I was very sad at your wedding that you didn't have Filipino food there.
I
was
know.
So were
looking
we.
forward to it. Yeah.
It was very
So were
white.
we.
I know. Molly, I will say my parents did say, is there going to be a roast pig? And we had to
Say no.
say no because Adam insisted on 3 desserts.
No. First of all, that did not happen. The 3 desserts,
The 3
did happen,
desserts did happen.
to be clear. But the lechon, which is
Yes.
what you were referring to,
Roast.
the roast pig, did not happen because it was not on our caterer's.
Shockingly, it was not on our
menu.
pre-approved menu.
What?
And we couldn't just roll in a roasted pig in this like historic home in the
Yeah.
middle of white
and
suburb
bury
Florida.
bury it in the ground. Yeah. Great.
Maybe on the vow renewal, Molly, when we send invitations to that.
Oh, yes. I would love
Oh.
that.
Or the 5-year vow renewal of Showgays. The 3 of us all claim our love for musicals. If we haven't been beaten down to a bloody pulp by that point and hate the entire genre, then that'll mean we've made it.
Yeah.
So this week, RJ, I think because you run our Instagram
Mhm.
and you got a request.
I did. So, listener of the show, Nicole, messaged us on Instagram and requested that we do this movie musical for this episode, which is Camelot. This is her favorite movie musical, and we asked her
Wow.
like, what about it is her favorite, and she really said
She said the running time.
She said Vanessa Redgrave's 60s haircut. No,
Oh.
she was very much in it for the love story between Guinevere and Arthur, and she said that she cries at the end when they have to say goodbye to each other, which is a very beautiful scene. She also thinks Lancelot is very dreamy, which I will agree.
Well, Italians will do that.
Italians will do that.
Italians playing French will do that.
Yeah.
Playing French very poorly. But
Very
Nicole,
poorly.
Nicole, thank you for the request. We had a
Yeah.
good time watching this one.
We
and
really did.
We love acting at the direction of our listeners.
Yes,
So
we love
everyone send 'em in.
interaction.
Yeah.
We love being not immersive. Interactive.
Participatory.
But yeah, all of the above. Wow, are you gonna do off
yeah,
the
it's
cuff
Adam's.
Camelot? I
I'm
mean,
gonna
you've
do
seen
off the cuff Camelot,
this-
honey.
you love this movie.
There is no possible way for me to get it in under a minute. I don't think. I think there's a lot that happens in this.
Well, let's put it to
Unless I go to bare bones.
yeah. Oh, I will say though, before we jump into this, yes, Nicole requested this. Nicole is also, it's her birthday this
Happy
month.
birthday.
So
Happy
this
birthday,
is also a
Nicole.
birthday request.
Forest Queen,
Yes.
possibly. Maybe she's not.
I believe
knows?
she was 18th, so that's
That's Ari's birthday.
whoa, Nicole, you share the same
Taurus
birthday as
Queen.
our
Very
Ampliverse
good friend,
co-host.
yeah.
Yeah. So this is our birthday gift to her, is this episode of her favorite movie musical.
If ever I would birthday.
And Adam's rendition.
It wouldn't be this birthday.
Okay, Adam, this is your 1 minute
Oh my god.
challenge summary.
I'm going to hold it up to the screen just to stress you out. That's
Oh,
what I've
absolutely.
decided.
Amazing.
This is your 1 minute summary of the movie Camelot, and your time starts now.
Camelot is about Arthur, a king of a realm known as Camelot. It starts with the end in a fun twist of events. And then it finds him looking back on the day he met his wife, Guinevere, They fall in love. She mistakes him for like a peasant. They get married. They're very happy together. He comes up with the idea for the round table, which is a bunch of knights working together for the good of humanity. Might for right is a phrase we'll probably talk about. And then Lancelot comes from France to join the round table. He is very proud of himself. He's a braggart. And he's very annoying to everybody else. And then there's a jousting festival.
10 seconds.
And cool. I'm literally
We're
40 minutes
halfway
into
through
this.
Act One.
Yeah. There's a jousting festival. He kills a guy and then he brings him back to life. Guinevere and Lancelot fall in love. Then just nothing happens for a while. And then Arthur kind of figures it out. And then his I was gonna say bastard son, which is technically the term, but what is like the not shitty way
You're
to
so
say
far
that?
over. Go.
Just end the
His
damn
son comes in, he ruins everything. They catch Lancelot and Guinevere fucking, and then Camelot crumbles. And they burn her they're going to burn her at the stake. She gets saved by Lancelot. Then there's going to be a war. This movie has 8 endings. How am I supposed to do this? And
at the end of the movie,
and then he talks to a child named Tom. And then he tells the story of Camelot. And then we're back at the beginning.
Well, you had it at just about exactly 2 minutes. So at least you were consistent in some way.
yeah.
That was hard.
Yeah, that's why we try to write them, because it's difficult to.
Yeah.
But we forgot to put in the notes this time who was supposed to do it. He is the King of England, by the way. Camelot is, I think,
but not really, right?
region?
It's not a real story.
No, but he talks about being the King of England in the movie. Right.
Well, he starts as Camelot, and then I think once the round table happens, then
he's like immediately as soon as he's talking to Guinevere about his job, he's like, so anyway, this is England and this is how this all works.
Right.
So yeah. I think Camelot is like the part of England where the castle is.
It's Buckingham.
Just the one.
It's like the
town,
one
castle.
Kind of. Yeah.
It's Buckingham Palace.
No, that's London.
Yeah.
Which was east.
Yes, let's start off by clarifying this. Arthur was not a real person. None of this is real.
True.
Yes.
Which did make me think about because the entire time I was like, so in the real story, Merlin would have just been like a very smart man. And I was like, oh,
no, it's all a legend.
Or it's legend.
So I'm gonna start talking about my relationship to this musical because I have listened to this since I was sixth grade. There was I love Julie Andrews, so
noted fact.
Noted fact. And we had gone to Barnes and Noble or Borders, whichever of the two, and I had gone to the CD section, and I had looked for musicals that she was in, and I bought the Cinderella when she did the original Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella for CBS in 1950 whatever, and I bought the original My Fair Lady, and I bought the original Camelot.
I guess it's so crazy that your regular Barnes and Noble Borders had these CDs.
I mean, Cinderella I think is the most surprising, the one that they had. But My Fair Lady and Camelot were popular records. So I feel that's not too.
I mean, maybe I just wasn't, because when I moved, I was already in 8th grade, and I feel like Borders, Barnes and Noble at the time, it was pretty slim pickings of music at least.
Yeah, this is back when there was that period of time where the music section at Borders and Barnes and Noble had expanded to be nearly half the store.
Yeah,
because they were trying to compete with a Virgin
Tower
Records or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, we see how that went for Borders.
For everyone, really.
For Virgin Records. So I have listened to this a billion times. It was the first musical that I tried to like memorize just based on the like listening to it.
This
I
was-
printed out the lyrics from the
Wow,
internet.
this was your
so
in the
I could, like,
heights of
yeah,
like
this was
just
my in the heights.
memorizing for music.
I think the music in this is beautiful. I have never seen the show ever. And Julie Andrews can't do anything wrong. So that's my review of the musical.
I can go next. So the first time I ever heard of this musical was, I mean, not, I guess, counting Adam just talking about this musical since I've known him. But really the first time I like fully experienced this musical was through the movie Jackie, which was a movie in 2017-ish, I think. 2016, sure. That tells the story of, or it's like it's not fictionalized, but it's like a dramatization. Thank you. It's a dramatization of Jackie Kennedy's like days immediately after the assassination, and the film utilizes Camelot's music. Bless you. Utilizes the soundtrack of the musical to kind of like score the movie, almost like most of the movie score was the Camelot soundtrack. And it kind of it was doing this like cinematic parallel between like the Kennedys as like Camelot, and they are like,
because of that. I mean, it's not from that movie.
Yes,
right?
That was
just,
yeah. That was like my first interaction with it, and then like from the movie, that's how I discovered that like that was actually a thing that their kind of like legacy and presidency, right? Like is.
Well, should I talk about it now or should I wait?
I think we should talk about this now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I read when I was researching today that, and by today I literally mean 30 minutes ago.
Hot off the press research.
This started because of Jackie Kennedy. Like Jackie Kennedy kind of created this like myth, and she like was in an interview. This is post assassination. This is, I think, 60. He dies in 63.
Is that the interview that they do in the movie? Because she does say that. Like,
I think it must be partly what it's drawn from. But she like in an interview says that Jack loved to listen to Camelot as he was going to bed, and his favorite song was The End, in which he says, hold on, I have it down here.
I have it too if you want me to.
It's, don't let it be forgot that once there was a spot for one brief shining moment that was known as Camelot. That was his favorite line. And so from then it like ballooned into this like, the Kennedys were Camelot. We head right in after this, and I'm sure Molly has stuff on this too. We head right after this into like Vietnam, which is like how the movie kind of ends too. It's kind of prescient in that way. So it just became like this big thing. There was like a performance supposedly in Chicago where this is after the interview had come out, and like there was a touring production doing the show in Chicago. They said the line, the audience wailed, and then everyone cried in the theater for 5 minutes straight, audience and performers included. And I was like,
what? The trauma jumped out.
The
My
trauma.
God.
So.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I remember talking to my mom one time about why people care so much about the JFK assassination. And like, it's like a thing that everyone could tell you where they were when they found out, that was alive at the time. And maybe it was my dad, I don't remember now, but one of my parents was saying how it's hard to understand if you didn't live through it, how much it felt like you like lost an innocence when that happened, and this idea that like truly bad things could happen in the United States. And so so she had this line, and then it was sort of like in retrospect everyone started to really idealize this like time when like the government could really like accomplish great things, and like things were positive, and like before things kind of got scary in the world, I think. But then there were also some interesting parallels, like JFK was a classmate of learners at Harvard, so they like, I don't know that they interacted, but they were like contemporaries. And he was elected 1 month before it opened, and then it closed the same year that he would later be assassinated. So it's like actual run basically corresponded with his time as well. So it was like this time where people felt idealistic in other contexts based off of the fact that the musical was running, and then also his presidency.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
It's
That's
crazy.
like, it's so, it's just, there is so much about just like the Kennedy, like just that legacy. Kennedy culture. There's just so much about, you know, them. And I feel like every couple of years, there's always something new that we kind of dig into.
Davenport, Jasmine
Kennedy.
Jasmine Masters. I just think, and I think it's also interesting to me because, like, as an Irish Catholic person, he also has this like huge presence in my community. Like, I remember I had a friend who, like, her parents just like had a picture of JFK in like their guest bathroom. Like, he's just like around visually. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and as far as like the Arthur story, truly, like Monty Python was like my main form of information and background on that. Like, truly, that was like and like I want to say like the Rugrats did a King Arthur Knights of the Round Table episode. Like, there were a bunch of like random 90s cartoons that did like a King Arthur episode, but truly it was Monty Python. Like, I remember watching it in 8th grade with my new American friends out in the park, watch it because it was one of those like movie in the park situations. So that's my background. How about you, Molly?
So my relationship, this is my first time engaging with the full musical of Camelot, but I was aware of its existence. I'm obviously sort of aware of the Arthurian legend, and I was like aware of the song. So I was supposed to read Once and Future King, which is the depiction of Arthur that this is based on, in high school for summer reading, and I did not finish it, which is one of the few books in my life that I was assigned and didn't actually read. I know.
What's the reason? You just like didn't have time, or
it just was like so long and so hard to get through. And I remember that I was in the parts where he's with Merlin, and it gets very like trippy with the magic and the like taking on different animals. And I was like, I don't get what this is about, and it's like 700 more pages, and I'm just like not gonna do it.
This is crazy, especially since Molly, Adam, and I all took like a reading class, like a literature class together in college too. And
we did.
Adam and I barely did all of those readings. Like, girl.
Yes, RJ and Adam can truly attest that I am, in general, the girl who does the reading. But this was one time when I didn't. So I always feel like I kind of missed, and then I also note that like The Sword and the Stone, which is a movie that I watched, but that's also about the like Merlin part of Arthur's life. So I feel like I kept engaging with like that first part of the story, and I always had this like little bit of sense of like there's this whole thing with like Guinevere and Lancelot that I know happens, but I like don't really know what it is because I keep not getting to that part of the story. So I was kind of excited to like finally actually see a depiction of that part. And then I knew the songs Camelot and If Ever I Would Leave You, both just from like being a musical theater kid, and they're like songs that are around. But also, I know my mom really likes the musical. I texted her for a quote. She did not respond in time. So sorry, Rita, your quote's not getting into the pod.
Your quote's not getting in, Rita.
Rita, sorry.
Rita. She's in San Diego playing with her grandchildren. Like, that's important. So I also feel like the line like, will I be young before I'm old feels like a thing that my mom would like quote and say. I don't know. Just like there are things that I feel like, or like if I would complain about the weather, she would be like, like the rules of Camelot that it can't rain except for after sundown, that kind of thing.
I fully picture her responding to like just you as a child, like asking about the most just whatever things, and she's like, you know what, Molly, I'm gonna teach you this lesson now.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I just wanted mac and cheese. What's going on?
Opaque references to musical theater. That's how I was raised. And then the last thing is the movie Marry Me, the J-Lo rom-com that was recently released. Has a cute scene around If Ever I Would Leave You. So,
really?
Yeah.
That's so funny because Belfast, which was one of the nominees for Best Picture, the Kenneth Branagh film, has a scene in which the grandpa character sings How to Handle a Woman to Judi Dench.
So that's
famed antagonist to Molly.
Showgays.
Molly.
Yes, my nemesis. I wonder then if Camelot is like having a bit of a cultural resurgence. We're gonna have to keep our eye out on this now.
Do I have tea about an Aaron Sorkin restaging of Camelot happening this year? That's actually the whole tea.
That's the tea. And the tea is that
announced,
sentence.
I think it was announced like last week. Yeah.
I started
Wow.
out excited and then I got concerned as you told me it was Aaron Sorkin, but
Yeah.
we'll see. Maybe that will be interesting.
I think he's just
Um,
redoing the book. Like I think they're keeping all the they're keeping the songs as what they are.
Yeah,
for
so
the
like
most
a
part.
West Side Story, the way
Yeah,
that Kushner
yeah,
did West
yeah.
Side Story. But Kushner and
But
West
it's gonna
Side
be a
Story is
show.
a clearer combination than Aaron Sorkin and Camelot. So I'm just
Yeah.
but because he does political stuff, but like, is this West Wing?
Yes, I
Why are you looking at me like that?
because I would say Camelot
is political.
is political.
No, that's what I'm getting at. Is that I feel like I'm worried he's gonna make it too important. Like it is political, but like, should it be Aaron Sorkin brand political?
You don't want him to talk
'Cause
about
it is-
Brexit. That's what
is-
you're saying. No Brexit and Aaron
Yeah,
Sorkin's
and like
Camelot.
people like talking quickly and be like, "Might for right, might is right." Blah 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 blah. Like I don't know
Yeah,
that I
it's
want
definitely
like
gonna do that for
pithy
sure.
dialogue about that.
For sure, it'll do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
I think the other problem is like Aaron Sorkin is not a great writer of romance. And this is
Or
half
women.
being well. I mean, there's only one woman in this entire show, so
So he might do well in it because
it'll-
he
yeah,
A woman, just write a woman.
a woman.
can only do one at a time.
But he doesn't really do romance well, and it is half of the plot.
Yeah.
Is like an actual
Huge, yeah.
huge like melodramatic romance.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
So,
sure. Interesting.
that would
Well,
be the
one
part I
more
would
thought on Marry Me in case, oh gosh, I got a tea leaf in my throat. One more thought on Marry Me if listeners are curious. J-Lo, amazing. Owen Wilson, I think lets us down in this one. So if you're looking for a rom-com, it's not bad, but like he could be delivering more. It just seems like he
Owen
wasn't
originally,
excited to
right?
be there.
It wasn't supposed to be Owen. Oh, I can't remember what this was.
Yeah,
now.
I remember that's correct. It was supposed to be someone else, and I don't remember who.
I wonder if it was someone canceled. That's usually what happens. So
It was
Oh,
what's his face
no.
that was in West Side Story?
Ansel Elgort.
It was
Yeah.
Ansel Elgort was supposed to have a romance
With J-Lo.
With J-Lo and like
Playing
old enough to
playing
play a dad.
Yeah, a math teacher with a 10-year-old daughter.
So
Would you say Marry Me is a movie musical? Should we put it in the
No.
No, I
Just
mean
one.
it has a pop song because she
Yeah.
plays a pop artist, but it's all diegetic, so I would not say it's.
Aw.
So let's go back all the way to 1485
Absolutely.
when Le Mort d'Arthur, which is The Death of Arthur, is published by Sir Thomas Malory, and it begins the Arthurian legend. Thomas Malory, we don't know who he actually was because there were like many claims to being Thomas Malory because like, you know how back in the Middle Ages when everyone had the same like 8 names and then you just
Yeah, for
rotated
sure.
in and out. So people were like, who knows?
And also authorship was like people didn't really like differentiate between like
No.
it's this person's intellectual property
Right.
didn't really exist. Is it?
There
can I-
weren't non-fungible tokens where you had to, move
we
it
know
over.
that society didn't really begin before the
NFT.
genesis of NFTs. Can I ask Adam, did your source say like, is it like we feel really
My
confident that
source.
this?
Mm.
Well, you have a year in here. I presume you looked at something to get this information. Was it like we feel really confident this guy wrote this book and that started the whole thing? Or is it like this is the first account we have that's written
Of the
down, but it
legend,
could have
yeah.
existed in oral tradition before it?
Oh, I didn't even look at the page that long. I literally
Great.
just looked at like,
Great.
where does this start? What's the
Was
genesis
it Wikipedia?
It was
Do you want me to look
Wikipedia.
at it? Okay, great.
I did know because I scrolled through the page really quickly because again, this was 8:03 and we recorded at 8:30. I did note that there are like 8 parts of the story. Or no, that was Once and Future King. Never mind. Le Mort d'Arthur is like a poem, basically.
like a Beowulf type epic poem.
Yeah.
Okay. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, all the greats. Mama, read do some heroes journeys. Okay.
No.
Beowulf.
Beowulf.
I literally don't know what you're talking about because I'm now looking at Wikipedia and it's giving me sources from like 516. So like I don't know why 1485 would be the origin.
Because I was on the Le Morte d'Arthur page.
So you knew that was the beginning and you went there first, or you went to the
He
King
clicked the
Arthur
link. I
Wikipedia
think he
page?
Girl, I started at Camelot and I worked my way back. I went back to Once a Future King, and then I went back to Le Morte d'Arthur, and then that didn't have. Stems from hyperlink
Begat.
inserted here.
It begat with a hyperlink from.
Are you on the
All right,
Arthur
well,
Legends page?
I think
Matter of Britain.
this is complicated, and we don't have time to go through the whole thing because Adam did not do his due diligence.
And I never have.
We
And
will
I never
simply
will.
say it began as a myth in the Middle Ages,
Mhm.
and
Correct.
it seems like had a disputed status of like whether he was historical or not for a while, but historians have since come to the conclusion that he was not ever a real figure. And so, there's been lots of versions of Arthur throughout history, and Le Morte d'Arthur is probably one of them.
Amazing. It's like the Noah and the Ark. Every culture's got a big flood that happened.
Which is why we know that the Bible is factually correct.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
We're super, super liberal about sexuality, but we're super about literal interpretations
Literal
of the Bible. That's
Literal.
like the weird combination of showgays that we're all creationists.
This is why we don't have
but we're
friends,
super
just us
progressive.
three. 'Cause we're the only three that have those same virtues.
Stupid. So then the Once and Future King, which Molly never finished, was published in 1958. It is by T.H. White.
The White?
Well,
The White.
The White.
yeah, there's nothing whiter than the story of King Arthur. I'll tell you that right now. And it's one of the things that is like a topic I kind of want to talk about later is this idea that the only justifiable reason that Merlin teaches Arthur, I should say, is the only justifiable reason for going to war is to prevent another from going to war. So war begets war, violence begets violence.
Right, which is really interesting in like a post-World War II context that this book was written in.
Yeah.
Correct. So let's fast forward to the musical. Camelot opens. Well, first it does its tryout in Toronto. Toronto. It is originally supposed to be the night it opens in Toronto. It is originally supposed to be 2 hours and 40 minutes long. It ends up being 4.5 hours.
Unconscionable.
Just
final-
for applause? Just
Okay. The show started at 8 because all shows started at 8 back then. Now there's a little bit of like a wiggle room, but all shows started at 8. Final curtain was 12:40 in the morning.
Oh my god.
I like Camelot, and I can't imagine a 4.5 hour version. Like, I can't imagine a 4.5 hour version of anything.
No, did it say like did like things go wrong? Like what was?
I don't know. How do you not have something like that in two? Or do you have something that's 2 hours and 40 and it turns into?
They never did a full run through, and the stage manager was just wildly estimating.
Yeah, maybe. I have no idea. So it gets pretty good reviews in Toronto, except everybody's big thing was like, you have to edit this. This is insanity. So it opens on December 3rd, 1960 and closes January 5th, 1963. Kind of like how Molly was saying it like is the exact timeline of the Kennedy presidency. During the run, there are 2 songs that are cut like a few months after it opens. Then You May Take Me to the Fair, which is in the movie, and then another song called Fie on Goodness, which is what all of the knights sing, where they're like bemoaning how awful it is that they're not allowed to like rape and pillage anymore because they have to like do these civil ways.
Chivalry. Boo.
Well, So there was a episode of Ed Sullivan show where
The Ed Sullivan
Show where he invited like Lerner and Lowe to do like a 5-year anniversary retrospective for My Fair Lady. And because this was on Broadway, they were like, well, we're actually just going to do Camelot songs and we're not going to mention My Fair Lady in any way, shape, or form.
Well,
Smart.
that's interesting because the Raymond Knapp article that our book chapter that I read for this mentioned the fact that it got kind of poor because it's so similar to My Fair Lady in many ways. It got sort of poor critical reception because people kept comparing it to My Fair Lady and saying it's a less good version of My Fair Lady.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of see why maybe they were like, do you know what? No, they're wrong. We're going to do Camelot and we're going to show them it's good.
And so then because it was on the Ed Sullivan Show, 2 things happened. It brought in $3.5 million in advance ticket sales. So it was able to like
Wow.
last for another like 2 years.
Wow.
And then, yeah, crazy. And then the other thing is Walt Disney was watching that episode of the Ed Sullivan Show, saw Julie Andrews whistle in the song
Simple Folk Do.
No.
Joys
Oh
of
yes, what do the
Maidenhood?
Simple Folk do? And was like, oh, I have a bit where Mary Poppins is supposed to whistle in my movie. And then he
A broad who whistles?
That was the thing. Nothing else about Julie Andrews' skills or
No.
talents attracted him to her, but
Nothing
he
at
was like,
all.
she knows how to whistle.
He
All
knows how
right.
to
knows how to
whistle.
whistle. And you know what? She does know how to whistle.
She does know how to whistle. That's one thing you could definitely say about Julie Andrews. She knows how to whistle.
Whistling legend. So that's all I have about and then the Tony Award situation.
Situation.
Just what it won.
Oh, I thought it made it sound like there was a controversy.
No. Julie was nominated, did not win, but Richard Burton won for Arthur. Conductor and musical director won, scenic design and costume design all won. So they walked out with 4 Tonys. It's pretty good.
Good haul.
Can I just add Knapp's observations of all the parallels between My Fair Lady and Camelot?
Yes.
English settings, Julie Andrews is the lead, based on
Sure.
properties that somewhere sit between like a myth and a fairy tale. There's a love triangle with an older actor who talk sings most of his lines and a heroic baritone.
Yes.
And he sort of gets to this, but I feel like he didn't fully finish the thought. So this was my understanding of what he was saying, which is that they have like a love triangle that has to do with sort of like falling in love with your own creation to some extent. So
yes.
in My Fair Lady, it's the guy who does the project falls in love with her. But then in Camelot, she falls in love with the guy who does the project, and then she falls in love with the product of his creation.
Yeah,
So there's like an extra layer in between, which I actually think makes Camelot kind of a more interesting story in some ways. So
And Arthur falls in love with just the idea of Camelot more
yes,
than anything
he falls
else.
in love with Camelot, and like in a way also falls in love with Lancelot, like not romantically,
Yes.
but like
He says it in the movie, or he says it
Yeah.
in the story that he
Right,
like loves
that's,
him
like-
and loves her.
and why he sort of like is so forgiving of the whole situation is that he
And why bisexuality needs to exist, and we need to promote
If
it.
he
and
just
we
had
need
the
to talk about
vocab, you know, if
I
he
like
just
your
the
framing
terms.
as we need to exist as if it's the three of us need to invent this thing rather than it being a thing that exists.
And I really think we should get down there, start drafting up some plans to come up with a goddamn bisexual.
I'd like to propose something. Sort of people loving people of more than one gender. It's the new idea.
You can get in on the ground floor. This is the newest NFT.
We're going to be selling our NFT of bisexuality.
Stupid.
Get on the Showgays coin to buy some bisexuality.
So the film is directed by Joshua Logan, who had directed the original South Pacific on Broadway. The screenplay is by Alan J. Lerner. It is produced by Jack Warner. It stars Richard Harris as King Arthur, Vanessa Redgrave as Guinevere, Franco Nero as Lancelot du Lac, David Hemmings as Mordred, Lionel Jeffries as King Pellinor, a character that should absolutely never exist, and Lawrence Naismith as Merlin. Cinematography is by Richard H. Klein. I never talk about this, but there's one shot in this movie. This is my MVP award for shots of the movie where they're getting married and they're like lit on both sides by the candles.
The candles?
Yeah.
It is the most incredible shot I think I've ever seen. Like I was like, it was a lot.
We'll need to return to that scene.
It was edited by Folmar Blangsted. Its music is by Frederick Lowe and Alfred Newman for the extra scoring of the film. It is distributed by Warner Brothers 7 Arts. It is released on October 25th, 1967. Its running time is 180 minutes.
Yeah.
So cool. Its budget was $13 million and it made only 31.5.
Still a profit.
Still a profit. Well, we don't know with marketing. That's the thing.
Yeah, and I also would need to know like what was the normal percentage return back in the 60s, you know?
Right. It was a big enough flop that this began the death knell of the big budget movie musical. But
oh, okay.
So let's talk about some casting stuff. Arthur could have been Rock Hudson.
Oh, you want to talk bisexuality?
You want to talk about just homosexuality? You want to talk about Arthur in love with Lancelot?
Oh, yeah.
Peter O'Toole, Gregory Peck, Marlon Brando, Richard Burton, obviously. Guinevere could have been Shirley Jones.
Hey,
friend
a
of the
singer.
pod. Elizabeth Taylor, famous wife of Richard Burton. A couple times.
Only thing she's famous for.
She didn't do anything else, weirdly.
No.
Julie Andrews, obviously, Audrey Hepburn, Julie Christie, and then Liza Minnelli or Cher.
God. Oh my God.
I want to see the Camelot starring Cher.
Yes.
I want to see Liza Minnelli and Richard Burton. That's the
I want
combo I'm
to see Liza
interested in.
Minnelli play Arthur and Cher play Guinevere.
No, I think it's
Shirley
full gender
Jones
bend.
play
Liza
Lancelot.
Minnelli as Arthur, Cher as Lancelot, and then Rock Hudson as Guinevere.
Oh,
Amazing.
absolutely.
Done.
Not wearing a
Green
stitch
lit.
of clothing.
I forgot the closer, but we'll just edit that to the end.
Yeah.
That'll be the closer.
And then Robert Goulet was the original Lancelot on Broadway, so he was considered for the role for the film. And then Terrence Stamp, who you may know from like the prequels for Star Wars. He's like that weird. Nobody knows him. It's fine. I know him, and that's all.
You can say it. The listeners might know. They may have watched a Star Wars before.
I don't know his name in the prequel. He's like the guy that's in the first one, and he like he's in the Senate.
Sure.
And he gets overthrown, and that's how Palpatine becomes like the head.
Oh, okay.
He's like the who doesn't matter.
He's who he overthrows.
In the first one.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Okay.
Great.
So this movie's 108 minutes, but if you were not watching this on a 35 millimeter or a 70 millimeter, you were watching the regular wide release. You were seeing in 1967 the 150-minute edited version.
Molly's eyes
on the
That
wide
was an
release.
option?
Molly's eyes just lit
Not
up.
since 1973 has it been an option.
We have
But
been
at
blessed
one
by the full
point-
version since then.
Yeah.
I want to say, like, in general, I mean, this movie is so long, it's crazy. But also, every time I watch a movie from, like, the 60s, between, like, the 40s and the 60s,
Yeah.
all editing is, like, 2 seconds too long. And I would pay someone to just re-edit all of these movies so that they just have, like, a modern pacing. Because, like, the meat is still there. It wouldn't change anything. It's just that all of the shots are somebody being like, here's my line. Here's the next line. Why is it like that?
Yeah.
Why isn't it more Aaron Sorkin? I think is what we're saying.
I want an Aaron Sorkin Camelot 180, totally on board. Let's do it.
I want to walk and talk throughout the castle.
Walk and talk with Camelot. Let's talk about Might and Right.
I'm so excited for your run in the writers' room for this movie. You working
Writers' room.
Writers' room. You and Aaron.
First of all,
I'm
Aaron-
a dramaturg.
Aaron doesn't do a
yeah.
writer's room.
No, I'm
Aaron
sure.
is the writer. I don't audition. I
Don't
don't
audition,
writers'
sweetie.
room
On West Wing,
anymore.
his writer's room turned in memos of like ideas, and then he would create the scripts. Like they didn't write scripts.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. But didn't he leave West Wing after a few seasons? He
After
didn't
the
do
fourth
whole-
season.
Yeah.
Adam's a winghead.
I'm a winghead.
That's what you call yourselves.
Yeah. This is the last American big budget film to recreate far off locales on a soundstage or a SoCal lot, because it got a lot of flack for being like, "That's Burbank, girl." Some of it was Burbank.
Yeah, that was my favorite part of it, personally.
Some
Yeah,
of
we were
it-
questioning. We were like, where
some of
is
it-
this?
so they had literally built a miniature castle on their like back lot in Burbank.
Yeah, because they shined that little pink flashlight when Arthur was like, do you see the pink glow? Flashlight on the little castle.
Yeah, but they did also film this movie in Spain. So there is actual
okay.
like they did go to Spain.
Spain.
They overshot by 12 days. It was a lot. Blah blah blah. Then this is a fun fact for a post that I'm pulling this straight from IMDb. I'm not even going to change the wording. For a post-marriage bath scene with Vanessa Redgrave, Richard Harris startled everyone by strutting onto the set completely nude with a large erection. This is where I'd like to enter the theme of Richard Harris is a horrible person to work with.
I'm so sad that I know this now.
This is Dumbledore we're talking about.
I loved him in this movie, and now now I can't enjoy that anymore.
Yeah. Apparently he's like a jerk. He campaigned super hard for this role once he found out like they weren't going to go with Richard Burton, because they were originally going to go with Richard Burton. Waited a few years, made My Fair Lady. My Fair Lady was a smash. They came back and Burton was like, "Oh, you can actually pay me more then, because I know you just made a shit ton of money." And they were like, "But we don't want to." And there are other British people that talk. And so
It's the only thing Richard Burton can do.
and
Julie Andrews
so-
can whistle, Richard Burton can talk.
Yeah, and that's what's important to remember here. So they were like, so once he heard that, he like did this like campaign thing where he just like kept calling and calling and calling, and he like supposedly like walked up and down the street with a sign outside of the studio and like had on the sign written the height of Vanessa Redgrave because she was already cast, Richard Burton's height, who was like 2 inches shorter than Vanessa Redgrave, and then his own height, which is like 3 inches taller than Vanessa Redgrave, to be like, "You can't have a short Arthur."
Which I feel like makes more sense for the character if there was like, I don't know.
He was also
Cared. Oh my
Also,
god.
who
Yeah.
cares?
he
You're
was-
on a camera. It doesn't matter. Tom Cruise is still acting, isn't he? So it doesn't matter.
the lot was a dry lot, and he would like drink all day. He
Straight edge lot.
He smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day and lost his voice multiple times during the shoot of this film.
Poor Molly. Look
At-
at her face.
At
just slowly.
one point, he was like hanging out with the guy who plays Mordred. I have to look at his name again.
Nope.
David Hemmings. And they were at his like David Hemmings' house, had a pool or whatever in the hills. So they went, and he was like gonna dive into the empty pool because he was like, "I'm so tired of this movie. I hate doing this. I hate Hollywood. It's all so phony, blah, blah, blah." And David was like, "Enough, stop." And he was like, "You're right, I won't." It's just, he seems very dramatic in a way that's like exhausting and would be really annoying on set.
Yeah.
And then the nail in the coffin for me is the reason Julie Andrews is not in this film is because they had just worked together on a movie called Hawaii, and she had such bad interactions with him. Once she heard he was the lead, she was like, "No."
Honestly, good for her. Not exactly like her career took a hit because she wasn't in Camelot. Good job,
Yeah.
Julie Andrews.
Yeah.
So there's
That's a
your
bummer.
Richard Harris is a wild card
Well,
in the 60s. And then he
it's
becomes
so-
everybody's grandpa in 2001 with
Yeah.
Harry Potter.
Well, it's so interesting because I was going to say, I don't know if you guys felt this way. I didn't have any of this context, but I thought that Vanessa Redgrave in some ways had better chemistry with him than with
Lancelot.
Nero, is that the guy's
Franco
name?
Nero.
Franco Nero, which I assume we're also going to tell everybody about the fact that those two were a couple in real life. I don't know if they were a couple throughout filming or if I think it happened during the course of this movie that they got together.
Yes.
Which I think is a really good illustration of how sometimes it's people can play better with somebody they're not actually in a relationship with.
Yes. I think
And
that's true.
so maybe she didn't like Richard Harris, but then did a better job of acting like she was in love with him. Whereas sometimes it can be harder to like, I've heard from people, I don't know, I'm not really a performer, but like sometimes it can be hard to like show that you're in love with somebody when you really are, because it's like you're not like as conscious of the act. I don't know, but it's a known phenomenon that sometimes people who are actually in a couple do poorly as a couple, and they weren't bad in this movie. I just like saw it more with Richard Harris.
It was
for me.
stronger with the other.
It was stronger.
couple.
I could like tell that there was like a tension between them. I don't know. But I'm obsessed with their love story. Are we going to tell them this now, the Vanessa Redgrave?
Yeah, I was just going to say that this was also one of Nicole's reasons why she loves this movie is this story.
So they like get together over the course of this film. They have a kid together and they stay together for like several years and they break up. And then she has like affairs with other men and she has other kids by other men and blah, blah, blah. And then in 2006 or 2005, something like that, when she's like 69 years old, they get married to each other because they find each other again. And I'm obsessed with this. And this is now how I think everyone should live their lives, is that you should have a series of affairs throughout your life. And then when you're 70 is when you should pick which one was the greatest love of your life. And then you should marry them. I think that's so cute.
I mean, it's honestly like,
great story.
It's a great story. And also what it's a nice fail safe. Like when you get to 70, you're like, all right, let me go through the past, who's still around and who I feel like is probably like there's still a connection.
Yeah. And I think she married a few different people, but this was his only marriage as far as I could tell. I love that idea. Yeah, I know, that's so cute.
It is very sweet. And they were also in a movie together. That's why they like refound each other.
Oh, that was how they got back together?
They were in I assumed that somebody else had known this. So that's
I mean, maybe stop falling in love with your co-stars, Vanessa Redgrave. That might be something you should be on the lookout for if you just keep ending up in circumstances like that. But I love it.
She just gives it all,
She really gives it all, yeah.
Letters to Juliet. She's in a movie called Letters to Juliet with Amanda Seyfried.
Yeah. I
And
remember
he
that.
is also
Was that
in
like
it.
a Nicholas Sparks or just it's
yes,
in that vein?
it is. It's in that vein. It was like she was in Italy. Yeah, she went to Italy and she finds like old letters and Vanessa Redgrave is like the woman that used to write those letters, something like that. Oh, he also dated Catherine Deneuve, Goldie Hawn, and Ursula Andress. He is Natasha Richardson's stepfather.
Right.
Well, yes, because Natasha Richardson is Vanessa Redgrave's daughter, so
I did not know.
kind of definitionally, yeah.
With who? Who was
her
guy
dad?
named Richardson. I think he was a producer or something. He was like not a famous
Tony Richardson.
person.
Tony Richardson.
Yeah, I'm sure he is famous in Hollywood, but I mean, he wasn't an actor. Yeah.
Wow.
Finally, I'm going to go through the award situation. I put the Golden Globes in here, but I don't really care. For the Academy Awards,
famously dead.
Best Cinematography, Richard Klein was nominated, and Best Sound was nominated. What they won was Best Original Song Score or Adaptation Score. Best Costume Design they won, and Best Art Direction. What's truly crazy, actually, I will talk about the Golden Globes for just a moment. What's truly crazy about one of their wins for the Golden Globes is that they won for Best Original Song, and the song is If Ever I Should Leave You, a song that is not original to the film.
Movie.
This is the only time in Golden Globes history that this has happened.
And no one said anything?
It's so crazy.
Or were people just like, it wasn't the news, but they still gave it the award?
I just don't think people didn't campaign back then. So like, what are we... You
So like
know,
they just show up at the awards and they're like, these are
yeah. It's so weird to me that they anyway. That would never happen now. Never. Let's talk about the movie. Let's get into it.
Camelot, Camelot, in far off France I hear you call. Camelot, Camelot, to you alone I'll give my all. I know in my soul what you expect of me.
So we've outlined a beautiful skeleton of what the topics shall be today. And we're going to start with Arthur.
Who we
Wart.
loved despite not loving Richard Harris.
Besides not loving Richard. Here's what I want to say before we actually start talking about the movie. I want to say this. I think this movie is really long. Actually, it is. That's not a thought. It's a really long movie.
It's a long movie.
It's so competently made that it's not like it's bad. Like it's not a bad movie.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Its pacing is slow. I think that's like the biggest hit against this movie. But like the performances are good. I think Vanessa and Richard Harris are like really good in this movie, and Franco Nero's like so.
Fulfills his role.
Yeah,
He does
serves
fine.
the role.
He serves the role.
But like it is crazy to be like everything's kind of here for me to like really enjoy this, but maybe it's because like I didn't, because like I wonder if like people when they watch like The Sound of Music as an adult have this moment where they're like, oh, it's so long, because I've never felt that way about this. Like I know objectively it is a long film, but I don't feel that way with The Sound of Music. But maybe that's just because I like grew up on it.
I think of it as long, but mostly because it had to be on 2 VHS tapes. So I knew visually that it was a long movie. But I also don't feel like I've ever watched Sound of Music and been like, I'm mad about how long this is. You know what I mean? It feels like it's earned in Sound of Music. I feel like they could have cut some stuff in this movie.
Yeah. Well, clearly they could cut 30 minutes so they could get a truncated 150-minute version out to the theaters.
Release that version.
Right in the middle. But yeah, I also noted like I felt like there were some weird tonal shifts as well, especially at the very beginning, that we like started on this very serious battlefield scene that felt like it could have been in the Joel Cohen Macbeth that just came out.
Exactly what I was kept thinking about.
I think that was it Joel or Ethan? I either sounded smart or really dumb when I just said that. But one of the Cohen brothers just did that Macbeth, and it was like very serious. And then it shifted to this opening song with Arthur, where he's like, "I'm the king of Camelot," and it was like, what's the vibe of this movie? Where do you want me to be right now? So that was a little weird. And I was wondering, Adam, when you said the thing about how it was part of the death knell of movie musicals, if like that was part of what people reacting to, like, musicals are weird that they do both of these things.
I think the reason it like starts to, I think it's mostly that studios start to realize that like just putting a shit ton of money toward a project doesn't guarantee that it's going to like overly pay off. And I also think that like we start by this point, it's 67. We're starting to head into like the 70s, like auteur director era, when like movies get so naturalistic and so like they are like reversing directly on like the 60s, like over the top lavish productions and lavish spectacle. So I think it's just like a lot of things. I don't think there's necessarily like one.
It's the like growing pains in between. And it feels like this movie is stuck in a bit, because I do agree with the pacing and the tone. Like they are doing such a grounded performance that I feel like if there was no music, like would this have worked? But like if they just like said, we're doing like a straight play version of Camelot, like would this be more effective? Or do we amp up the camp and the performance aspect of it? And you know, it feels like in the middle.
I also wonder if it's partially historical context that the stage show opened in 1960 or 61, and then this was until 67, and like just America's appetite for like sincerity had maybe shifted. And this is where I'd like to bring back friend of the pod, Raymond Knapp.
Yes.
We gotta have him on one day.
We gotta have him on one day. I think this book's not that old. He's probably alive. We could probably invite him.
Great.
So he wrote about the fact this was covered in a chapter on idealism in musical theater. So this is actually part of his second book, which is on American musical and personal identity, whereas before I've been referencing national identity. I actually don't know if it's the second. I don't know. It's chronological, but second in terms of me bringing it into this podcast.
Yes, a second book to be introduced.
And so he has a chapter on idealism, and the two big ones he covers in it are Camelot and Man of La Mancha. And he talks about how it's different from fairy tales, because chapter before is on fairy tales, because it takes place in our world and it's meant to compel real change. And generally it has to do with like a failed but maybe not totally failed idea of dreams, versus fairy tales are often like they end happily, but like idealistic stories often end tragically, but you have this sense of like, but the dream shall live on, obviously. And he talks about how, if we remember the marriage trope that we discussed in Guys and Dolls, where it's the ideals of like conservative Christianity and then like hedonism coming together, that in an idealistic musical, it's a failed marriage trope. And that shows how like the idea is not able to be realized in the idealism. And so the woman stands in for the ideal, and like the fact that the marriage fails shows how also like people can't live up to this idealized role, that like Guinevere has to be this like perfect figure in order to hold up the tradition of like what marriage is supposed to be, but like obviously she fails because she's a real person.
Yeah, well, and then I think also ties into the idea of like Camelot can be perfect if everybody just does what they're supposed to do, and like also if
they are just perfect.
If they are perfect.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that's like the kind of, I think it's also interesting because I think in the 60s we're also in this era of like what's that term of like urban planning like starts to become really popular. And like planning specific communities and like a very like trying to like how Epcot was originally supposed to be like a full city, and like Walt Disney World was only supposed to be the money making way that they like created an actual city in like Central Florida.
That sounds like it would get dystopian really quickly.
Yes. And I think that like I wonder if this is like one of the first, and it kind of isn't even, obviously it's not based, everything that it's based on is pre what I'm talking about, because we'll also kind of, I'm sure, touch on like as we head into Vietnam too, but like all of that happens before, but I think is such like a cyclical part of like culture, in that like ideas like come back and like regrow, because I think the 60s had like a lot of earnestness that like comes back then in like the 80s, and then I think comes back in like the mid 2000s, and then like we get this reaction of like cynicism to that too.
But then also maybe now, as we were talking earlier about it coming up, we noticed it cropping up in a couple movies this year. Are we getting into another phase of idealism? And I wonder if it's connected now to like, we talked about this in the Jamie podcast about the like kind media trend in response to Trump, that people wanted to create very like positive, earnest kind of things to because it felt like the political scene was so terrible. And so I wonder if there's like parallels there. And Knapp also talked about how the 60s were a very popular time for idealist musicals because of causes like civil rights and Vietnam War protests that were very like, we are going to live up these ideals and we can like change things and we can make them better, was like very much the time. But then he said that was, quote, effectively snuffed out by Pippin's anti-idealist message, which is, I believe, 72.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, RJ, would you like to tell us about how you feel that Pippin is an anti-idealist musical?
Something you were not prepared to talk about whatsoever.
Was the only one of us. I'm gonna vamp while you think about it, because RJ was the only one of the three of us cast in Pippin our freshman year at
I was in it
Loyola.
my senior year.
Adam did it.
I did it the year before I went to college.
Yes. Well, my memory of RJ and Pippin was him coming home and telling us about how Mark asked everybody if they tumbled. And Archie raised his hand because he had a Tumblr blog.
I literally thought I said yes, and then he was like, "Oh, what do you do?" And Caitlin Destafy, who's an amazing dancer, our year, was saying all the different like moves and whatever, and I said, "A somersault." Yeah, I can probably do a somersault.
Because you couldn't just admit that you misunderstood the question.
Absolutely not. A freshman in my absolutely not.
So talk about the anti-idealist message of Pippin, please, RJ.
I mean, yeah, I feel like it's more tied, like the overall conversation that we've had and what you've brought up about utopia is that, like, yeah, in Pippin, that is literally challenged. It's like the leading player runs this little, perfect little circus or whatever that because Pippin wants to like basically create their own story and like branch out. That's when they like he gets excluded from the circus because it's like, no, we are just here. It's a little bit more of a a meta theatric situation.
I hate Pippin. I gotta be really honest. I think it is very like the 70s being like, we really get shit.
We
that
get
you
wrecked.
don't get. And
We
it's like,
get
shut
it.
up,
We
you
get
don't.
it.
This isn't actually thought out well. It's fine.
But that's the thing. It is definitely like it feels
music,
like
good music.
very reactionary. Like that musical is such a reaction to the time.
Well, so my recollection, I only saw it that one time at Loyola. So it's this self-actualization thing where he's seeking to create his own story and he tries out different like philosophies of how to live a good life. But then they convince him to self-immolate at the end. But I don't recall what is it that they're... Right, doesn't he die at the end? He like gets into a box and it burns up or something.
No, he's supposed to. They want him
to.
And then he says no, and then they leave him, and he's left all alone. And then
with Catherine and the baby,
and then the kid is left on stage. Catherine and Pippin leave the stage, and then they start advancing on like the child, starting the cycle.
So very like if that feels very reactionary to like 60s cults, right? Of like any group that's like promising you like I've got the answer and I'm gonna like solve it for you. Be careful because you might end up dead.
There is like idealism like skewed in a wrong way is a cult. Like that idea of utopia can be like skewed.
Anything in excess is a problem. Let's just say that. We're here for right down the middle,
This is a centrist podcast.
Podcast.
The Buddha judges said.
Progressive sexuality, Christian creationism, centrist politics.
The tenets of Showgays.
The pillars of Showgays. Oh my God.
That's amazing.
But I will say I never really thought about until you brought up that like it's like a utopian story. I never really thought about it until you brought it up, and I was like,
Camelot or Pippin?
Camelot.
Yeah.
I think also in Camelot, it's made such like the entire song Camelot, in which he talks about how like the perfect weather and and like how really all he's creating when he creates the round table, he creates like the trial system, so allegedly. Who's to say?
Well, it wasn't real, so he definitely didn't invent it, but yes.
I don't know. I didn't read the full Wikipedia page. But like it's all, I don't know. It's all very it's very like he's getting, it's like so I feel like centered on the fact that like Camelot is like perfect, and then like everything has to, it feels, what I will say about Camelot is that it feels very Greek in that that it's not going to end well. Like you go into this obviously you start with the end, so that also gives you a heads
which
up.
was also very Greek, that like Greek plays were about Greek myths that everyone in the audience knew, so like everybody walked in with that same knowledge.
So I did kind of like building to this, like, you just know, and it's not hubris though. Like I don't think Arthur ever feels. What is his
fatal flaw?
Trusting, loving.
I think Morse Mordred. What the fuck is his name? Mordred. I think Mordred puts it really well. sorry, Morse Mordra is the spell to cast the tattoo for the dark mark.
Dark mark.
I think Mordred puts it really well when he's like, you can either save Guinevere or you can like let her burn. And if you do one, your life will end. And if you do the other, like your morality will like be shaken. And I was like, I thought that was like a really good encapsulation of like his actual struggle.
Conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is idealism ultimately, right? That he has this idea of a perfect place, but in order for that perfect place to exist, the people in it would have to be perfect. And it's interesting because he really understands that people aren't at like a human level, right? He's very forgiving of Guinevere and Lancelot's affair on that like interpersonal level, but he understands it as the king. He can't be forgiving of it. And so it's like, and I don't know if maybe
RJ,
is this trying to imply that he kind of invents that like kingly persona as well, do you think?
I don't know, but we were watching the movie and RJ was like, Guinevere's about to like be burned at the stake or whatever, and RJ's just like, you're the king. Just do something. This doesn't have to happen. And then I was like, yeah, but that's like the point, is that like
if he does something,
then it shows that like there are some people that deserve to not be like, they're like, they shouldn't follow through with like what their punishment should be.
Yeah, right. Because it's sort of that like American, not that America invented it, but like that like nobody is above the law, which is like supposed to be very important for American presidents until the last one. So like so it is like very much that idea of like you have to live up to these greater standards when you're a leader. And I think because so much of it is about like him inventing, as you said, like the round table, like an oligarchy, he's inventing so like the first steps towards democracy, he's inventing the trial system, he's trying to like do all these things, and like also this like you have to live by ideals that like are beyond what a person can really do. And I was kind of glad of that line from Mordred where he explained it, because part of me was like, maybe it's kind of on the nose that he like explains like the reason you're in conflict is because if you do one thing, something will happen. If you do the other, something else won't. But I kind of had the same impulse, RJ, of like, couldn't you just be like, nah, like you're in charge? Couldn't you do that? But Mordred kind of explains it for us of like why he can't actually stop the execution.
But like I think this is where I think they sing this song called Guinevere. I'll put it in here. But in the song, in the musical version, it's a bit longer and it's more of it's very Greek chorusy in that they're just telling you what's about to happen.
Going on,
And in the Broadway version, they sing like he purposefully picked the execution time to be the morning when it's like really foggy, so that Lancelot would have his best chance of like saving Guinevere. Like it's very purposeful in like what he's trying to achieve, but he's still like following through with like what he should do. That's like I do kind of think like if we're gonna compare like Arthur versus fucking what's his name from My Fair Lady? Rex Harrison.
Henry Higgins.
Henry Higgins.
I'm Higgins to Sue White.
Yeah.
Who we've called out as the biggest villain
of all of
movie.
I'm definitely an Arthur. I'm team Arthur.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, way more sympathetic.
Yeah.
Genuinely loves her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Big cuck.
Yeah. Big old cuck. I think too, Adam, about the like Greek tragedy of it all and the fact that you know it's going to fail. I also love that it starts with him saying this thing to Guinevere about the castle used to shine in this pink hue. So we're like already past the perfect time, even when we start, right? So it's like he's constantly trying to get back to something, even in this musical that's supposed to be about the most idealized time, right? So I think that also is very interesting, how it's like all built on nostalgia, even in Camelot. So yeah,
because I always kind of like wondered like what that was trying to achieve at the top of like you get introduced by Arthur. It's a little like, is he unsure of himself? Like, what is he actually trying to like? What am I supposed to leave us like? This is Arthur, you know? And I think it took me a while. It wasn't honestly until after the wedding when he's actually like, there should be a round table. Like that's when I'm like, oh, okay, he is trying to like reach for something and he doesn't really know what it could be.
That scene almost was funny to me though, because like when he's like trying to figure out like how I'll make a round table.
I know.
I was like, this is so on the
Yeah. It's hard to get into the headspace of like, what if you didn't know that and that idea was like new and interesting. Also, 150 people around a round table, you would not be able to hear each other.
Are you kidding me?
Impossible.
Yeah.
But but yeah, you have to kind of get down with it. And it's interesting how quickly he gains confidence. His first song is him being like, I don't remember any of the lyrics of the song, but I remember that the message was like, I'm not sure of myself as the king, basically is the point of the first song. And then he meets Guinevere and he's like immediately like, here are my best ideas right now. And it's like, she gives him this confidence to like come up with all this stuff, which is why it's so tragic, not just like on a personal level that she falls in love with Lancelot, but also on like a political level.
It's also, I think what this movie and this story does really well is you also genuinely believe that they love each other to start. Like, it's not like they get together because like she just thinks he's cute or whatever. Like there's a whole, they really genuinely love each other. And then she also just starts to love Lancelot. And that's why it's so interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that Scandal is based on Camelot, but Arthur is the one that falls in love with somebody else instead of Guinevere.
Wow.
Because the whole like, because in Scandal, for those who haven't seen it, I only have watched like the first few seasons as well, but the like basic premise is like the president is in love with Olivia Pope, but he also has this wife who's the first lady, and that they really truly loved each other. And then he meets Olivia Pope and is like, I'm overwhelmed and I'm so in love with you. And like a lot of the show is about this tension that the president's having this affair. And I'm now wondering if that was like an explicit,
their way of like
it's
skewing
so
the
funny
canon.
to think about the show Scandal as being like, it's about a president having an affair, because it's so quaint now.
Oh yeah for sure. But now I want to like rewatch it. I wonder if there's like a scene where they play a song from Camp. Like I bet there are even references to it that I just like didn't catch at the time. Because I'm
sure in
similar.
that first season definitely was probably something like that.
Right.
I really like okay, let me start again.
Yes.
Camelot is a movie.
Camelot is a movie. Let me try to do the challenge one more time.
1588. A French guy wrote a book, and
what else do the simple folk do to perk up the heart and get through? The wee folk and the grown folk who wander to and fro have ways known to their own folk. We thrown folk don't know when all the doldrums begin. What keeps each of them in his skin? What ancient native custom provides the needed glow? What do simple folk do? Do you know?
Once along the road, I came upon a lad, singing in a voice 3 times his size. When I asked him why, he told me he was sad, and singing always made his spirits rise. So that's what simple folk do, I surmise.
Arise, my love, always lighting the skies, my love.
The meadows shine with columbine and daffodils blossom away. Venus calls to one and all, come taste delights while you may. The world is bright and all is right and life is merry and gay.
So they cut Merlin out of this film, basically. He's in the stage production.
He sure makes an impression though, the little bits that he's in.
Yeah. So in the original,
you mean the tree? That was Merlin? That talking tree?
He is a freaky dude, y'all.
So with his owl. So in the Broadway production, in the stage adaptation, Merlin and the scene it starts the same way, where it's the end of the show, and it's which almost kind of sets you up for the audience is like a similar to Merlin, in that they kind of know what's going to happen, because that's Merlin's whole thing is that he like lives backwards but also
in
knows
time.
the past and the future. Who knows?
I think he's just supposed to know the future because it's just his past. That was my understanding of his character.
Yes.
He doesn't know the future. Or he knows the sorry, dang it! It's so hard to talk about.
He knows
he
the
only knows
future.
the future. He doesn't know the past because the future is his past.
But he also has to still live in the same linear timeline that we all do. Just meaning like you would have to be having a conversation with Merlin, and he couldn't just keep forgetting what you're saying.
We're gonna get way too tripped up if we get too into time travel.
I just but yes, his big thing is that he's like he ages in reverse. Basically.
He also speaks in reverse, so you have to record him talking.
It's also important to say, I guess so. I don't know. But you have to say that he moves backwards through time because like Benjamin Button ages in reverse, but he's still like experiencing time in the same way. But Merlin is experiencing time in the opposite way.
Yes. I do like the line when Arthur's trying to explain it, and he says he doesn't ages, he youths, which I thought was very funny. But
if we should be so lucky. Oh my God.
God bless. So it starts the show, and Arthur is like asking Merlin like what's going to happen, and like why Camelot has like fallen, and then you like flash back to I Wonder What the King Is Doing Tonight, which is that first song that you were talking about, Molly, and that song was to Merlin, and the whole moment happens. He meets Guinevere. They're very charmed. He sings Camelot, blah blah blah. Merlin's there for pretty much all of it, and then he gets seduced by a water nymph. This is a plot.
This is in the stage show?
In the stage show. She sings a song called Follow Me. And as she seduces him, he forgets everything that he's supposed to like warn. He says he's supposed to warn Arthur about Lancelot and Mordred. And then she takes him into her cave. And
Merlin gets seduced.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh.
So then in the movie, by them, because throughout the movie, Arthur is like, oh yeah, he said something about this or that. Is that still part of the movie?
But Adam's saying it's Merlin that forgets stuff, not Arthur. Because that's why I said at first too, is I was like, that's why Arthur couldn't remember what Lancelot's significance was. But no, you're saying Merlin forgets.
Merlin forgets because he like leaves.
He's gone for the rest of the show.
He's gone for the rest of the show.
He's just gone.
I think he comes back for those like flashbacks that are like Arthur's imaginings of Merlin.
Yeah.
But like the character, the living present character gets taken like good scene 2.
Point that I didn't think about at all in the movie, but I should have been like, why is Merlin not like around and giving him warnings and stuff?
I just assumed that he like died.
I guess I thought that too. Yeah, that he only existed in flashbacks of like Arthur's memory, and
it's played very like Empire Strikes Back, where he just keeps like seeing visions of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
But I had to assume that I was like, okay, it must be that Merlin decided strategically that he's like not going to give Arthur the whole story about Lancelot and Guinevere because he like thinks it would mess things up too much, or it would just be like too devastating.
As a teacher, like you have, it's one of those inevitable, like, yes, I know what's going to happen, but you have to experience it still. It's not
right.
It's all very hero's journey for sure. I just thought that was interesting to bring up because it's like the biggest change, I think, from the musical to the movie.
There's another big change that Nat mentioned, which is that in the stage show, Lancelot and Guinevere never consummate their relationship. So they, in the stage show, apparently, they fall in love in the same moment, but they manage to like hold themselves back. And it's not until the scene where Mordred tells them, the king's going to be gone at the very end, then like they catch the two of them like kissing in her bedchambers or his bedchambers or something. But like that's as far as it goes. Because in this version, it's extremely clear.
Yeah.
They have been together. It's a very romance novel. Yeah. And it makes, there's this whole tension in the movie about how there have been these knights who've been challenging Lancelot to duels because they keep saying like, you're having an affair with the queen, you're having an affair with the queen. And if that's not true at the time that they're making those challenges, I feel like it really changes the story. And I was curious about like, why do you guys think that they changed that, and like how do you feel like it changes the story if they don't consummate, or like if there's no like physical contact, let's say, between them until that final scene, how does that change the story?
Yeah, like what is the claim about morality they're saying when those people are actually getting banished for being like, you are having an affair, like because you are, versus like you just are in love with her.
Speculation that's actually not
it's
true.
purely speculation. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because it textually they like make it aware that they like love each other.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so I know that like pulling back, I know that the director wanted to fix some problems he saw with the stage version. So one of them is he thought Julie Andrews Guinevere was like too wholesome, so he wanted to make her like a femme fatale. So that's why he like went with Vanessa Redgrave, and she like is definitely
She does
sexier
that.
than
She
Julie
does.
Andrews.
Yeah.
Definitely more fatale. Yeah.
But I don't know if that is also part of it, that it's like I don't know like what that does in terms of like thinking about the like the finding them and the
Morality,
treason
yeah.
and the morality of it all.
I mean, I guess it also in a way raises the question of like what makes something an affair, right? So if they are in love with each other but choose to not consummate it, is that still enough of a violation of Arthur's idealism that like that it should be something that they're challenged on and Lancelot should be banished or something like that? Or like, is it the action of acting on it?
It does feel like it would have been more like theatrical, Shakespearean almost, of like if they did it and the one time that they were actually felt like, okay, we can finally is the one moment that
leads up to the client, right? If that's like the one moment that they give in, then that's like a really different tension. Because it's a little weird in the film that we like see them fall in love, and then there's this scene which is
a full
really
romance novel.
But before that, they fall in love at this tournament. Then they all go to Arthur's chambers to do a
three-way shot.
I fully cackled. There is a scene where the three of them get into Arthur's chambers and they're like toasting to something, and the film is trying to tell you these two know they're in love. Arthur knows that they're in love. It's extremely awkward. And they zoom in on each person's face in sequence, and I cackled aloud alone in my apartment. It was so funny.
I will say this movie, this movie and this story, I think generally just makes me realize that like polyamory should be for some people. And I think this is the people that it should have been for. Because they would have been fine.
They would have been fine.
Like,
You literally
we're a throuple.
I wanna challenge that in a second, but let me finish my telling of the narrative. So we have a very clear like act break, I would say, in this movie where so everybody understands this. Then Arthur has another meeting with the Round Table Knights, and he kind of like has this soliloquy about like, this is complicated, but like I think we can keep going. I think we can do something here. Like I'm gonna keep up with my round table idea. And then we kind of have like basically a second act beginning where they're having this duel. Lancelot is having a duel with a knight who's accused him of having an affair with the queen. And then when he sings If Ever I Could Leave You, or like in that same scene, then we have the flashback that's like full romance novel. It's like every time they meet and look at each other, and then
she opens the fields. He's picking her up and spinning her.
She opens the door to his bedchambers, and there's a legitimate fan on her. Again, full cackle of like, what are you doing? But like, it really tells you like, let's in retrospect tell you the whole story of how they end up getting together after they fall in love. And it's like a weird pacing choice, because it's like, why are we like leading up to it and then we're like, and then quickly backfill, but like, let's get back to it. And I guess it's because they, in the stage show, they were still leading up to the moment, but they decided in this one that they wanted them to have already been having an affair, I guess.
Yeah. That was another point at which RJ was like, wait, so why is he throwing him out? What did he do? And I was like, I had to be like, because he is accusing him of like having an affair, blah, 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 blah. And then there was a lot of confusion around just what was going on with the middle knights being banished.
Yeah. Because it does definitely feel like, obviously you do get that conflicted kind of for Arthur of like, I do genuinely love Lancelot and I love Jenny, and so it's I don't want it, because literally, even if someone whispers like, have you seen Lancelot and the Queen walk side by side? He's fully like, treason! Like, it's just like at the smallest inkling of it. And when you made that joke about the polyamory thing, like, it is kind of like there is something that, like, I just assumed that the Queen was already doing something with the knights, because even like in the lusty month of May, in the like what is it, the like that song where she's like, you can't take me to the fair or whatever. What's that song?
Is that a song or is it just a scene?
The three, where you talk to the three knights.
Yeah, and then the knights. Yeah, okay.
Then you may take me to the fair.
Then you may take me to the fair. Yeah.
I think we're supposed to understand that that's a line that she's allowed and is encouraged to cross. Like, she's meant to be this object of
desire for them.
And like they're supposed to want to win her, but she's never supposed to like act on that. I think it's kind of
I think that's one of the ones where it seems like the biggest change between like the Julie version in the Broadway show and like the Vanessa version in this one, just meaning like it is the same text is what she's given, but the like stage version has her all like interacting with these soldiers in one scene. Like, she keeps like running into guys and trying to like take down Lancelot. So she just like comes up with these like fun ways for him to like experience these trials. Whereas in this version, like placing them in these like different intimate moments,
very
dynamic and like on a and that makes it definitely feel more like not necessarily that she's doing anything improper, but that she's like she's toying,
flirting with the line already. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. I think
and apparently that whole thing was her idea. That whole thing was Vanessa Redgrave's idea. Like, make it like a montage of scenes.
I mean, she's toxic and I love it. Like, let's just be clear. She literally starts the musical with a song that's like, why can't I just do fun things that girls do, like make men kill themselves over me? And it's like such a clear thesis statement.
Yes, work slay. Yeah.
I like can't even believe. I mean, Julie Andrews is like very wholesome vibes in general, but like it's hard for me to even imagine a wholesome version of this character. She just like is
but
that.
Even in that first scene with Arthur where it's like, oh, you're not gonna like take me away, are you? And he's like, no, I wouldn't do that. And she's like, why not?
Yeah.
How dare you?
So there's a very clear, like, well, there's a very clearly confusing sexual politics of the time, I guess is what I mean. Of like, she's supposed to like flirt with this line. She's supposed to be this object of desire, but she's supposed to be unattainable ultimately. And that clearly there's like an intensity of what is between her and Lancelot. And whether they consummate it or not before that final scene, there's an intensity that somehow goes over the line, and it kind of, let's talk about feminism. It kind of shows women are like constantly, there's this like perfect balance you're always supposed to be maintaining of like being appropriately desirable, but like not too much always. Yeah.
And if you waver one way or the other, you're labeled as the extreme of that. Like, it's like, you are a prude, or like, you are a harlot.
It is funny that this show also like textually puts in C'est Moi, which is Lancelot's song. They put in a reference to, he says, had I been made the partner of Eve, we'd be in Eden still, as like his like, I'm so virtuous that I would refuse all temptation whatsoever. So I think it's funny that like it clearly draws a parallel to like Guinevere is Eve, like being seduced by.
She's the only woman. Yeah.
In just that there's only one woman. Who is allowed to speak in the entire movie. No, that's not true. She has her handmaiden.
And there's
who says a couple lines.
And those girls lusting in the month of May.
Big lusty in May. Yeah.
A bop.
It's May. It's May. The lusty month of May. That lovely month when everyone goes blissfully astray. It's here, that shocking time of year when tons of wicked little thoughts merrily appear. It's May, that gorgeous holiday when every maiden itches for fun, wholesome or
It's mad. Depraved in every way. Those dreary vows that everyone takes, everyone breaks, everyone makes divine mistakes. The lusty month of May. It's May.
I wrote down as it started, I was like, is lusty like a word that used to be a little bit more wholesome? Like the way that like making love used to mean like whispering sweet nothings in your ear. Like it didn't literally mean sex.
Yeah.
And I was like, did it used to be more wholesome? And then the song kept going and I was like, no, I do not think it used to be more wholesome. I think this is what they meant.
This is what they meant. And I think that was more kind of like added flame to that Guinevere fire for me of like, okay, is she more involved in Camelot than, and like for me it was like, is this a lot like this, is this the expectation of her?
That scene feels very like flower power too, like it feels very hair, it feels very like that late 60s energy.
I also wonder if part of the like sexual politics of the time is not giving too much attention to one man in particular, right? That like maybe it's okay for her to be really flirtatious as long as she's somewhat equitably distributed around the round table. but that like if she's too interested in one other man that's not her husband, then like that becomes the problem, is the intensity of just Lancelot.
Yeah.
Maybe their real issue is that she's not flirting with us enough now because
it's
she's
that idea of like, is flirting cheating? It's like like oof.
Which gets back into the idealism of the whole thing of like there's like this perfect thing, but like in order to execute it, it's like too confusing to try to have this ideal of like the perfect wife, because like, well, what counts as cheating? What's too much over the line? Like what's going to upset people? Yeah.
And also like just the heart of it being like from the beginning, Guinevere is like, he's a virgin? No, there's no way. Like, you know, like
Lancelot, you mean?
Yeah. And that like the idea that Lancelot is so virtuous is like a thing that they
make fun of. But
I mean, like, I know he's supposed to be like a very like braggartly like character. But I don't know. I didn't really feel
it's antithetical to what we would consider this character today, which would be like a dude bro.
Yeah.
And he's like a good person, which is like, it's hard to equate the like big douchebag. It's hard to
imagine a man being attractive and a good person at the same time.
Say that,
Molly.
No, it's hard to imagine like somebody who is like that
virtuous and pious, but also
like so full of
so masculine, like the alpha masculine.
Yeah, because masculinity is so equated also with having gotten sex before, right?
Correct,
so like
conquest.
You couldn't have a character now that's like, I am the epitome of masculinity, and one of the ways that I embody that is by choosing virginity.
Yeah.
But I think that's also why I think like, and I don't know if this is what you're necessarily talking about, but like, I think what's interesting is like Arthur loves both of them. She obviously loves both of them. And I think he also loves Arthur too. Like, I don't think it's the same. I don't think it's to the same extent.
Yeah.
But I think maybe his is more, he just loves the like,
the
being
call
part of like honoring the respect and the what, like the title and the like everything, the royal we, as it were. But like, I think there is like a love and respect that he has for Arthur in general. I don't think when he like is fighting the knights that it's just for her honor and his honor. I think it's also for like
absolutely
the crown.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, in fact, Lancelot loves Arthur first in theory, because he fights Arthur when he first gets there, not knowing it's Arthur, by being like, I am a knight of Arthur and like I'll defend his honor. So he's like in love with the idea of Arthur. That's what draws him to Camelot. I was going to ask, do we actually think Guinevere is in love with both of them? Because I sort of think that this was my challenge to your throuple idea. I think that Lancelot supersedes Arthur, and she like can't bring herself to be intimate with Arthur anymore once she falls in love with Lancelot. That's how I interpreted.
Yeah, I mean,
dynamic.
wasn't that kind of like the idea behind What Do the Simple Folk Do? And especially the ending of like them spinning around or whatever. I kind of took that as like her
so late 60s.
her being like in this
Wow, man.
she is in that like confusing swirl of like
Yeah.
I have to keep fulfilling a role even though I don't know if I'm actually
I think it's
like,
also the thing of like Arthur challenges her intellectually and like in that way that like Arthur fulfills things for Guinevere that like Lancelot cannot, and vice versa, if that makes sense.
Okay, at the beginning of the Simple Folk song, this was the most heartbreaking part of the whole thing for me. So let me back up a little bit further.
Not
she
the
first
erection
meets,
not even the erection part.
not even the erection. The erection did bring me to tears, but for other reasons. So earlier, when Guinevere first meets Lancelot, and she meets him and Arthur, she starts to like take off Arthur's armor in this like very sweet and intimate way. That he's getting ready for the picnic, and she's like helping him take off his stuff so he can be more comfortable. And she's like right at his side, and it's like very like, we are a couple, we care for each other, like, you know, that kind of whole thing. At the beginning of the Simple Folk song that happens after she's consummated her love with Lancelot, Arthur asks her to stay. They talk to each other, and she's like, so can I go? Kind of. And then he asks her to stay, and she holds his hand, but from the furthest distance you could possibly be from someone while still holding your hand. And I like got emotional because it was the change in their body dynamic of showing like, I will be here, but like only out of duty, was what that communicated to me of like, I'll hold your hand, but like from as far away as I could be. And Arthur also has this line about Mordred where he says like, this is the only son I'll ever have. So I took that to mean like they stopped having sex once she got together with Lancelot. So I felt like she was, I feel like she still cares about Arthur and still like admires him. And obviously at the end, when he meets the two of them in the woods and she's like crying, I think it's not just like personal shame, but like, I'm so sorry that I've disappointed you and I've humiliated you with this choice. Like, I don't think she doesn't care about Arthur anymore, but I feel like it's like a mostly platonic feeling at that point for her. It's not, I don't think she's like in love with Arthur. I think when she falls in love with Lancelot, she's not in love with Arthur anymore. That's what I thought.
Well, this is what I mean. This is like the eternal question of like, how do we define what is the definition of love? Like, obviously in a musical, it's always going to be like the romantic, like the huge emotions. But like, if you just boil it down to like, love can be anything from like the big erotic love to like fraternal or familial love, then I do think she still has at least that for Arthur to a massive degree. Like I think that she like Tammy Wynette stands by her man, and I think that's
that's good in all circumstances.
That's good in all circumstances and no notes. But I that's why I think like this love. Okay, so like normally in love triangles in any kind of media, it's always like there's one person that's the object of the affection and two people are trying to vie for it, and that's not actually a triangle. That's like an arrow. It's an arrow. It's an angle. And that's fine, but that's not really what it is. And it does actually feel like this is one of the few pieces of media that like truly defines an actual triangle as like this is, which is cool.
Right.
If ever I would leave you, it wouldn't be in summer. Seeing you in summer, I never would go. Your hair streaked with sunlight, your lips red as flame, your face with a luster that puts gold to shame.
I guess, I don't disagree that like there is a version of love that she still has for Arthur. I just don't know that they like would be a throuple though, because well, I don't know. Maybe in modern times, Lancelot and Arthur would be able to be like, we genuinely love each other. But like, I just think that like, but if that was a relationship, it would not be fair to Arthur in like another circumstance where he didn't have to be there. You wouldn't want to be with your partner who's like loves you less now that they found another partner. That sounds like a really toxic version of polyamory to me.
Well, some people are into that.
I'm not saying there aren't people that are in that circumstance. I'm saying that maybe it's not a healthy dynamic though for a relationship to have.
I'm picturing like very like there was that Netflix show Sense8, which was kind of had like this kind of dynamic where there was a gay couple, but then they had like a girlfriend who
was like filled in the beat. Like she was pretending to like be with one of the guys was famous.
Is an actor. Yeah. But like she was also still getting like an enjoyment of like, I don't know, watching basically.
Being like a part of it by not actually like participating.
So like there is it did cross my mind of like, would Arthur be fulfilled knowing that like Guinevere and Lancelot found each other and like can be happy together, you know? And I mean, I think at the end there is a little bit of that, but like if that was an actual like communicated thing in the relationship, like within the confines of the castle, like would he have let that go on if he just like knew openly? But I do understand too that like because he has created such a virtuous Camelot.
But I think if there's anything that's the break in the love triangle, it's that Arthur loves not just two things, which is Guinevere and Lancelot. I think it's also that he does love Camelot as well, which I don't think the other two. They clearly don't love Camelot in the same way that Arthur does.
I think Lancelot might.
I think
and like I would say
it would be of the two, it would be Lancelot who does it.
But it does feel like between the two of them, like who is the one that is willing to be like, well, it doesn't apply to me? Like, is there a feeling of that, or like
feels like
Camelot doesn't apply to me?
It feels like it's Arthur's Camelot is what Lancelot loves.
I think it's I think it's Arthur might care the most about it. And I think also Camelot might love him back the most because he's the king of it, right? And like they're going to go to war for him at the end. But I think Guinevere loves it because I think part of what she loves about Arthur is this thing that he creates there. I think she loves the idea of the thing. She helps inspire the idea of the thing. And I think, Lancelot is very in love with the ideal of what Arthur is creating. So I think Camelot means something to all three of them, but I do think that Arthur gets the benefit of being the king of that thing.
So he's he's benefiting.
That's the additional love that he gets that kind of makes up for it, that he doesn't get the like intimate, passionate love fulfillment that the other two are getting.
Wow.
Did we do it?
Welcome to the Dan Savage podcast.
Oh my God. We just fully I will say just for the movie in general, like performance wise, I do really like Vanessa Redgrave's performance.
Really good.
Even though
she's not a singer.
She's not singing Julie Andrews.
Did you not, Adam, I believe you texted the group chat when we first said this movie that
you
Vanessa
said
Redgrave was miscast, and I need you to explain yourself.
I would say that vocal wise, this is miscast. I also think Lancelot is miscast vocal wise because he doesn't even end up singing his own songs. That's a dub.
Oh,
we've talked about dubs. Dubs are fine, but from a purely vocal perspective, especially if you're going from what I grew up on, which is Julie Andrews singing these songs, to Vanessa Redgrave trying to sing these songs. And I don't think she doesn't sound bad, but it's just, she sounds weak and and maybe that's part of
singing to here, like you are listening.
She's singing to a camera for sure. And maybe it's also that maybe because Julie, when she sings, sounds so that's her whole thing. She sounds so perfect. Like she has a pristine quality to her voice, and Vanessa doesn't. And so that makes this character more sound it adds to the layers of complexity of this character to some degree, in that she sounds weak. And I don't mean that in she's like a woman. I just mean it's
oh my God.
She sounds like vulnerable when she sings these songs.
I will say, as I was watching it, I was always drawn to Vanessa, and I kept thinking that I wouldn't have.
She's a star.
Yeah, she is a star. She is very good. This movie does lean into that naturalistic kind of sense in movies, and she does a really good job in it. And I wouldn't have, if for some reason Julie did this version, I don't think I would have I don't know. I wouldn't have wanted to see her in this so up close, vulnerable, kind of intimate. Like, I don't know. Like, there was just a quality that I felt like Vanessa Redgrave was doing that I felt really comfortable and like enchanted the entire time because I was so close to her and like seeing her act very like natural and grounded in the situations. Like, Mama was brushing horses. I was like, what queen is this? She's bartering. I don't know. Like, she just felt so in that world.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
really believed it.
I also just, while we're praising this toxic character, I want to point out her best read, which is when she first meets Lancelot and he's like, I really perfected it. Like, physically I'm like there, but of course we're always working on our spiritual selves or blah, blah, blah. And then she goes, have you tried jousting with humility lately? Girl!
Burn!
Yes, Mama, work God
I will
slay.
be asking men at the bar if they've tried jousting with humility from now on.
She apparently had this like moment where she wanted to do first of all, Vanessa Redgrave, actress and star.
Actress and star, yes.
She speaks French because a lot of like British people learn French in school. And she wanted to do a scene like where she like makes fun of, I think it's the scene where her and like Pellamore, what the fuck is his name? The worst character in this
King Pellinor.
King Pellinor. She wanted to do it where she's like, they're like that scene where they're like making fun of Lancelot. She wanted to like say all of her lines in French to like emphasize the point that it's like so stupid that he's like the way he is, just so he knows what she's saying specifically. And they had to be like, Vanessa, we're not doing that. Vanessa, I get it, but like we're not Vanessa.
A little too cerebral. For everyone. Also, I thought you were going to say that she was like, wouldn't it be funny if I spoke better French than the guy who played Lancelot? Because he is very clearly Italian.
It is so funny.
Italian.
He's like, my name is Lancelot Dulac, but I think I like a dick. Like, I was like, what is it?
But I want a spaghetti.
It's like no effort was made to make him a French accent.
Just because you don't say the H's in your words doesn't make it a French accent, because you are Italian.
Yeah, he started in spaghetti westerns. That was like how his career started.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
The pieces of the puzzle. I will say I do get it though. I feel like a very burly man. And I would have done the same thing. And honestly, if he said like, yeah, I'm virtuous, I'm pious, that's why I'm so strong.
That's why RJ would have.
I would literally be like,
my Catholic schoolboy dreams
absolutely. I would have, oh my God.
Yeah, he doesn't do it for me. I don't get it.
He's no Marlon Brando for sure.
Yeah.
He's no Marlon Brando. He's the kind of man that like when people fawn over, I'm like, this is how I know I'm not entirely straight, is that I like do not get. This is like supposed to be the ideal man for everyone that's attracted to men. And I'm like, nah, no thanks.
Hey, at the end of the day, we're all still wet for Marlon Brando. So at least there's still something.
Marlon Brando, he checks every box somehow for every sexuality.
For every, yeah.
This man though is only for people who only like men. That's his brand.
I talked to my mom on my birthday, and she had just listened to the Guys and Dolls episode, and she was like, so Marlon Brando, huh? And I was like, yes.
What are you talking about, huh?
And then she was like, I think it's so funny that you brought up like how I didn't like that show or whatever. And I was like, oh yeah, I hope you're not upset. And she was like, no, it's fine. And then she was like, should I watch it? I don't know if I want to watch it. I was like, I mean, it is good. Like, you'll enjoy the movie, but I don't think you have to. I don't think it's something you like have to watch before you die. She was like, okay.
We gotta do soon. We gotta do a retrospective pod where we start to rank these films, because I feel like I've got a lot of thoughts now comparing things that we've watched to each other.
Yeah.
But maybe, I feel like Guys and Dolls would be pretty high up there on like you should watch list.
Maybe that could be our like end of the year situation, or our 1 year when we do our 1 year.
Yeah. When did we start this podcast?
Oh, girl.
The beginning of October.
Okay.
There you go.
So we're like halfway.
Yeah.
Um,
The last thing I really want to bring up is Mordred. I think like after watching Power of the Dog, I just
chaotic
like
twink.
chaotic twink as like a film trope was like, wow, I didn't realize this was way back in the day, like was already established. So now I just want like an Avengers assemble of chaotic twinks from different films, and I would definitely add Miss Mordred into this.
Oh my god, like a cabaret that's just chaotic twinks.
Yeah.
Chaotic twink monologues. It's a cabaret night, but it's only
Yes.
monologues.
Because twinks in New York need work, and why not give them a cabaret?
Give the Newsies
Give
work.
Newsies work. And I would absolutely do Mordred as one of them, because he literally comes in just to stir the pot.
Just to stir
like
the
I
pot.
genuinely think, like, do you actually like believe any like what of the things that you're like? Do you actually like prescribe to anything that Camelot is doing, or do you know like this is all stupid and I'm just
He
gonna
literally
steer
gets to come in and be like, one of his lines is like, "The round table's broken, Arthur." And I was like, go off, bitch.
Go off, queen.
I just want to add that Mordred's mother is Arthur's half sister. So this whole musical is about how Guinevere and Lancelot are really betraying the whole idealism of the whole round table thing, but he definitely had a kid with his half sister.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah. So you know,
I mean,
It's his
it is a
father,
different
uncle.
it is a different situation in that this Arthur had this relationship before he met Guinevere, which like by
Right.
modern
the
standards is totally
virtuosity doesn't.
fine,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But like it's a little hypocritical that like
Mhm.
the whole thing is this retching of clothes, or what's that? What's the term?
Retching of clothes.
Retching of But they're all cut up about like how could we live in this world where the queen is having an affair, but like he does have a son out of wedlock, and that's
Yeah.
just like whatevs.
Fine. He's
Well,
a
'cause
he's a knight.
man.
Yeah.
He's a man, so yeah.
I do like there's one thing I want to finish with is just that I like that they don't end up together. Like I like that I don't love
Yeah.
that she goes to be a nun. I don't love that.
Yeah.
I love it as a girl who went to a convent for high school. I think nuns are super cool, and I always feel like ending up with nuns is a happy ending, not a sad one. So.
Get thee to a nunnery, girl. She said gladly.
I don't think it's like a I don't think it's like a sad ending. I just think it's like I don't know. I don't know what I think. But
It's the Greek tragedy of it all. Like no one gets the
no one gets what they want.
Yeah.
And that definitely
except
makes it feel-
Mordred.
Mordred's
He sees Camelot
on
burn.
top of the world.
Well, he flees. He doesn't even get because like the whole reason he goes to Camelot is because he wants to end up becoming king one day. But
Mhm.
I guess so. Or maybe it's just revenge that he feels like his father betrayed him. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know.
We don't spend much time with this character.
We don't
No.
spend much time with this character. I have to say before we go, if they really wanted to take this movie down by like 30 minutes, you gotta get rid of King Pellinor.
King Pellinor does absolutely nothing.
I liked him. I didn't have any strong feelings about him.
I was so annoyed that I was cognizant of how long the movie was.
Yeah.
And every time he was like doing anything, it had nothing of substance. And half the time it was like Arthur coming up with new things for like Camelot to like be better. And
And
it
he
was
was
just
just like,
Pellinor being like,
yeah.
well, but if I go to trial, I'm going to kill people. And then it was like, oh my God, I don't care. I don't need a devil's advocate character. This is awful. I hate this. That was the only thing that I hated.
I think I liked him only because it was a nice person for Arthur to talk to after Guinevere went off with Lancelot. So it
Yeah.
was like, it's nice that Arthur gets a friend.
He has a friend, yeah.
A friend who's not fucking his wife. So I just think
Or
that
a
that's...
tree.
Or a tree. So
Turn me
that
into
was
a
nice.
bird. Make me a bird.
I think there's a couple of things I think we still need to talk about. One is that you said we were going to talk a lot about Midas Right, and we didn't actually
That's true,
talk
we
about
didn't
it.
talk
So
about
is
Midas
there
Right.
something to be discussed there?
Just that okay. So the concept that Arthur comes up with for Camelot. Trademarked is "Might is Right." It's his campaign slogan, 2024.
No, it's "Might for Right." Is his
might?
campaign.
Yeah, might is right because might for right. Hunt, hunty.
No. He is going against the concept of might is right. It's actively oppositional to that idea.
Correct.
To rather have a policy of might for right.
Slay mama right.
Which is what with West Wing season 1 episode 7 proportional response.
Wing heads, am I right? Sorkies.
He just they name dropped that concept like a few times in this movie, so that was the only reason I kept bringing it up, was because it seemed very important to them. It's not important to me. I'm a pacifist. So.
Do we think, well, I wanted to ask, in the 60s, that as we talked a lot about the historical context, what do you think that they were trying to say about the concept of might for right in the 60s? Were they celebrating it? Were they saying like, maybe still not such a good idea? Like,
it's interesting because it seems like everything's like on Arthur's side through pretty much all of it. Like, it doesn't seem like there's anything that he brings up where the textually it's like, oh, but maybe that's incorrect. And so I would have to assume that it feels very like based on World War II, and specifically like America being like, well, we didn't get involved until we were involved.
And it's upheld, and I'm guessing this was still or already the narrative in the 60s as like the most morally just war that America's ever engaged in, right? I mean, because of the Holocaust, I think people have kind of come to the conclusion of like, it was necessary to get into conflict to stop that for sure. So therefore, you know, we made the right call. That war was justified. So I guess in that way, maybe might for right. Yeah. But then I guess maybe going back to like, but then the Vietnam War, which was...
What is your definition of what is for right?
Yeah. And when did the Vietnam War start?
I think 68.
Or when did our involvement rather?
I think 68. I could be wrong.
This says 1955 through 1975, but I feel like that's probably the conflict in Vietnam, but not America's involvement. Yeah, 1965 is when the U.S. got involved.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting that it opened before that, and then the movie was made after. Because, yeah, I think that it does ask the question of, like, is that still a good concept? Because, yeah, what is right, and is might the best way to sort of, like, enact that righteousness?
Right.
Which is also interesting because then he institutes... Because he institutes the trial system, which is kind of even moving away from might for right at all, because the dueling system is the idea that like God will bless the person who has the correct opinion by making him win the fight. And a trial system is like, what if we use logic to determine who's correct about a conflict? So I don't know. I mean, I definitely feel like it's not a concept I want to endorse in 2022, that's for sure. Well, and I'm trying really hard not to talk about the slap because I know that by the time this comes out in May, nobody's going to be talking about it anymore. But I do want to talk about Will Smith right now.
I mean, it's also like, what is whose definition of right are we going with? Because there always has to be like
a right and a
right
wrong.
that you're basing everything off of. And if your entire thing is like war for a specific positive cause, then like, well, what are you defining as a positive cause? Obviously, World War II, even still today, is obviously like everyone's like, yep, 100%, we did the right thing. Very few naysayers on the internet who are like, World War II was a bad idea. Other than just generally World War II was a bad idea.
Yeah, we got to stop any of it from happening. That would have been better. But yes, yeah.
But like our involvement was, and I think even a majority of Americans at this point in time would probably say we should have entered it sooner before the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
But knowing what we know now, how bad the Holocaust was, but I don't think there's anything since where people, and definitely not the Vietnam War, as it became super unpopular. And I think most people now look back and realize that America was trying to, what is it called when you go to other places? What is it called?
Invade?
No. Like
Colonize?
democratically colonize countries, like trying to make other countries democracies just for the sake of like, well, we are a democracy and it works.
So you should be too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess ultimately, as I think about the musical, I guess the musical is also telling us Fight for Right doesn't work because you can never fulfill this perfect ideal. And by the end, they're all in a conflict that nobody actually wants to be in because of this idea of right that they all feel like they have to like enact war in order to defend that idea of righteousness that is actually unattainable at the end of the day. So I guess really the musical is also saying, nope, it's better than might is right, that's for sure, but it's still not very good. We can still do better.
Yeah, that's why I also like the song that's cut from the musical, which is I think unfortunate, even though it is a 3-hour movie, which is called My Own Goodness, which is Mordred has worked all the nights up into a frenzy, and they like literally like the whole song is just a complaint about how because they only are allowed to fight for specific causes, they're not allowed to like have fun while fighting like they used to. And it's very reminiscent of like just like the general like let's go back to the better time. Like it's even funny that within this story of Arthur, like the whole story is Arthur telling us about the better time. There are characters in the better time wanting to go back to the better time, which was before the better time.
Yeah.
So there's always a better time.
There's always a better time.
And it's tomorrow. And that's
The
beautiful.
sun will come out tomorrow.
When I'm stuck with that day, that's bad.
I'm so sorry to our listeners who are just about to fall asleep, and that one really woke you back up.
ASMR.
Yeah, they've been listening to our dulcet tones.
Our dulcet tones of Showgays. The last thing I want to say is that our friend Raymond Knapp, in his chapter on idealism, talked about the fact that particularly German idealists, who were the people who were like, your subjective experience is all that matters. It's like all about what's in your mind. They were like very into internal idealist in the sense of like just a thought that exists in your mind. They believed that music was the best art form because it was the most unfettered idealism, that it's like the most disconnected from reality. And Knapp says that music, because you perform it, like, and in musicals we perform the songs, it's sort of this way of like, we're bringing ideas into reality by the act of performing out the music. And he talked a lot about the idea of like singing a song in the shower is like, you can access this heroism that's often in these very idealistic musical theater songs. And you always pick songs that are like big hero idealism and how it like inspires us to be these like more heroic people. And I think that's like a really lovely thought about musicals to end on today.
You don't want to end on the wedding dress?
Oh my God, that wedding dress, you guys. It's so gorgeous.
The whole wedding scene is maybe like 30 seconds of this film, and it's probably the best 30 seconds
It
of
truly
the film.
is.
It's so beautiful. The wedding dress was like apparently multiple like fishing nets all like interwoven and like combined, and there were like seashells like embroidered like into it. Like it's so good.
Don't watch the whole movie, just look up the clip of the wedding, you guys. That's what you should do. Yeah.
Well, let's move on.
We might make it. We might make it past the Camelot runtime. That was
What have people been saying about this movie? So critics on Rotten Tomatoes, this film holds. When I say this, I don't know if I've ever defined this for our listeners, and I don't want to treat them like they're dumb, but it might not be clear. When I say that Rotten Tomatoes gives a movie a certain percentage, it does not mean that this movie is 17% good out of 100%. It means that when they took us aggregate of all the critics' consensus, 17% of critics thought this movie was good. Okay, I just want to make that clear what that means. So
I think that's worth defining. Yeah.
So I only got one review from this, and it's from Roger Ebert for the Chicago Sun-Times. So Roger Ebert, working at 1967. You better go off, King.
A young up-and-coming star in the movie journalism.
Camelot then is exactly what we were promised: ornate, visually beautiful, romantic, and staged as the most lavish production in the history of the Hollywood musical. If that's what you like, you'll like it. I'll just crouch in the corner here and gnaw my haunch of beef and send the wench to fetch more ale. Mostly his whole review, I just closed the end because I didn't want to read the whole thing, but mostly his review was like super positive. He really liked it. He thought it was a bit big. He thought it was definitely over budget. But he liked the performances. He said Vanessa and Richard were like amazing.
The image of him crouching in a corner and gnawing on a haunch of beef is so strange that I thought for a minute you had made this up, because it's like just not something I expect to be described in a movie review.
Yeah. That's a Ebert review for you, you know. You're gonna get the
poetic. It's the imagery in there, yeah.
But on Letterboxd, the regular folks, what do the simple folks say? Robbie gives this 3.5 stars and says Richard Harris plays to the back row of the theater, one city away. He is giving you Royal Shakespeare Company actor. That's, I mean, he is
BBC.
But it does not fit what this movie is trying to do. It is very well done, but it is funny if you were to like remove it, of like that soliloquy he has with Excalibur is so just like it's very intense. And remember, that's the end of Act 1, which comes at around hour 45 into the film.
Also, the fact that you just said Excalibur also reminded me that I definitely saw what I think was a Disney Channel original movie when I was a kid that was like, wasn't there one that was like modern day and then they get transported back to Arthurian times because they touch Excalibur?
Sure.
Neither of you remembers this at all?
Nope.
Okay, well, I'll have to look this up later.
Fake Disney fans.
Maybe it's another mother daughter contest doing what was that musical?
It was me combining a scene from Bob's Burgers with the movie Jersey Girl, I think was what it was. Yes.
So user call named Nighthawk gave this 3 stars and just says King Arthur the Cuck. And then Quinn gave this 2.5 stars, and their review says, interviewer, what did you think of Camelot? Me. Okay, great. Great gowns, beautiful gowns. So great. Mostly though, if you go and look at Letterboxd reviews, it's a lot of people penning it as one of their favorite films of all time. So who wrote this in? Nicole, you're in good company.
I mean, if we're talking gowns, it's the first look. It's the first look.
Oh,
of
the
Vanessa.
like all white with
the winter
hood,
outfit.
the winter
yes.
look when they're clearly on sand.
Yes,
they're on white sand.
Snow sand. It's that for me.
Yeah, it's a good movie. It's a long movie, and it's a slow movie.
But it definitely feels
well made.
It is, yeah. It feels like the like great movie musical, epics. So I do see like the fondness that people have for it.
Kids at the Round Table is a 1995 Canadian American fantasy film written and directed by Robert Cannell. And it released at Cannes, then premiered in Quebec, and then premiered on the Disney Channel.
Wow.
It premiered
at the Cannes International Film Festival.
Wow.
So its trajectory was wild, but I recall enjoying this movie as a child.
I recall watching it.
I recall it being a favorite, I believe.
You know what you didn't recall? Writing a closer.
I did not recall writing a closer. I'm going to ask a wild one this time.
Okay, here we go. I'm so excited.
We have to wildly speculate what fantasy myth will most encapsulate the Biden presidency?
Oh my God. This is so. Oh, shit.
Think of all my myths.
Or maybe should I make it a myth or should I make it a musical? Or maybe either option.
I mean, either, I think works.
A mythical musical.
A mythical musical. What do you think we will use to describe the years that Biden is president?
I'm trying to figure out what defines the Biden presidency.
I mean, it's very difficult because we're just in the midst of it right now.
Yeah, we're not even 2 years in.
And how things shake out in Ukraine are really gonna determine what the next few years are gonna look like.
Do you have one?
No.
Nailed it. Great.
Maybe this is a question we ask the audience. What you think about this?
I feel like I don't know enough myths.
I mean, like Greek stories.
You know, I know.
Myths are like Greek
Myths
stories.
are like...
I don't know if you know what they are, but they're like from Greece and they're like stories that they told each other.
Yeah, the
What's
oral
the
tradition
tension?
of storytelling.
What's the tension?
I mean, I have a boring one and it's not about Biden. And it's
Okay.
not a myth.
So it's none of the things that I prompted you to answer.
Nope. But I think
I
like
did want to tell you about the dinner that I had tonight, though. So.
it was pretty bland. No, I mean, like, I think other people have pointed this out before, so I'm not the first person to like say it, obviously. But the Trump presidency was like the emperor's new clothes, and how like
Sure.
people just keep gassing up this man that is living a lie, gassing him right up.
I thought about asking Trump. Trump makes more sense because we have hopefully experienced the end of it, so we can like look back at it. But it feels less fun to talk about Trump, and I try so hard to forget he exists every day of my life. But we could definitely answer for Trump because it's probably more doable.
I do feel. I would answer. I have a kind of answer for the Biden presidency. Like, it feels very like Sisyphus to me right now because it does feel like there is something we're trying to get to, but like everything keeps coming
Remind
down.
the readers who Sisyphus is.
Sisyphus, I'm gonna butcher this story, but Sisyphus is like pushes a rock, but he's on a slope, so it keeps pushing down, so he has to keep pushing it back up again.
You got it.
I don't know. Was it like this was like a
it was his punishment.
Punishment? Yeah.
But I don't remember what he did wrong. He was a man. There you go. Reason enough.
Yeah, like it feels like there, and especially with the hope of like the campaign of, you know, like we're gonna push out, but it does feel like he has gotten something that keeps pushing him back on what he's trying to deliver, like, you know, the struggles on passing Build Back Better, a pandemic is not over, and then now like world war. So
I mean, that general idea just kind of feels like the history of America.
That's
how we
true,
keep
yeah.
like pushing. I don't know. Like I'm not a person who is like, America's worse today than it was when it started. That's crazy. That's not true. But I do think that like
not since the good old days with, you know.
No, go ahead, finish that sentence.
RJ. When were the good old days, RJ?
When were they?
You know,
we're trying to get this canceled on the spot. So.
Yeah. My good friends Ronnie and Nancy, you know, back when they really knew how to run this country.
You want to talk about what's the one who flies too close to this? Icarus.
You want to talk about throat goats, honey? I mean, it's.
You said that, I think, on the last pod, and I
We
still
did.
feel so shocked by that phrase every time it's spoken aloud.
Anyway, I think I totally just thought about another one too. It's gone.
Well, it's okay. Molly
It's
hasn't
gone.
said one.
I haven't.
It feels like the Odyssey.
Yeah, I was gonna say Agamemnon, and I like don't know who Cassandra is, but I feel like there will be a Cassandra in retrospect.
Yes.
I feel like there will be a person
Okay.
or like an entity that we could have listened to avoid disaster, and we're somehow missing the boat.
Yeah,
on that.
and
that's
it's-
what it feels like it's happening right now.
And I think it's Marianne Williamson. And I think we did not.
Should have met them on the battlefield with love. Absolutely. Stop vaccinating people. That's kind of one of her things. So that would have been great for her to be president in retrospect if she was like not into vaccines.
Or, Tulsi. We never gave Tulsi her.
Maybe Tulsi
Flowers.
had to go around.
Flowers.
I think Tulsi Gabbard is like, in our
plant?
progressive about sexuality, Christian creationism, political moderate.
She's our
She may be our number one listener.
number one listener, Tulsi Gabbard.
Oh no. If she
Mess.
says the word showgaze in a Fox News interview,
Yeah, drop it in
we're
Tulsi
done.
so we know. So we know you're a listener.
we're closing shop, okay?
Well, Aaron Sorkin, I hope you were listening to RJ's thoughts about America as a Sisyphean task, because I think you should drop that into your Camelot redux.
Listen.
There you go.
Sisyphus, Sisyphus, in far off France, I heard your call.
Stupid. Well, thank you so much for listening. As always, you can leave us a review. I've never checked. Do we have any reviews?
I don't think
I
so.
genuinely
Where?
never checked.
Where should people leave them?
On Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, I wrote the last.
Oh, you
review.
wrote the last one. Okay, so that doesn't count.
That doesn't count.
Great.
But I will. If you do genuinely love the show, please leave us a 5-star rating or review on Apple
Leave us a
Podcasts.
5-star rating. Send us an email.
Tell your friends to
Tell your
listen to the
friends.
pod.
Hey, this was our first request.
Request.
Send us
Request a
requests.
musical.
Send us an email with your thoughts.
Tell us what you think.
Give us
Yeah.
Aaron Sorkin's email address so we can email him some ideas for Camelot.
And I think we put these out late, but I can always, drop in. No, not late. Sorry. We record these super ahead of time.
This is a real Merlin moving through time situation.
Oh, yeah.
Just thinking. So I could always if we get an email about a movie or whatever, I can always drop it in the next episode I put out of just what the email was.
Yeah.
We don't have to talk about it. That was fun.
We could always record this could be off the podcast. We could record us having conversation when we get to it and then drop that audio clip into.
Yeah.
That's really what I
different
meant,
topic.
but I
Yeah.
realized it sounded like I was just
We're not gonna
just
talk
recording me reading
I
it
will just
down.
read it aloud. Here are Rita's thoughts on it. Thank you, Rita.
What's the song I should go out on?
If ever I should leave you is the only song I can ever remember from it.
What do the simple folk do to help them escape when they're blue? The shepherd who is ailing, the milkmaid who is glum, the cobbler who is wailing from nailing his thumb. I'll do the whole song. When they're beset and besieged, the folk not noblessly obliged. Maybe if they didn't have such long stanzas, this movie wouldn't be as long. Girl, cut your songs in half. Every song has 4 verses.
I didn't get to talk about do we like the talk singing? Were we
gotta
annoyed
ring the
by
bell and let boys and girls out of class right now, y'all. They need they need the episode.
The school
to be
bell
done.
is ringing,
There
girl.
will be many other
ringing.
musicals where we can talk about
Talk singing? Okay.
This is not the only one.
Okay, as long as we address the state of talk singing, because
Goodbye. Thank you for listening to the best revival of a podcast, Showgays. You can find us on social media. Adam is at Adam Noecker on Twitter. RJ is at RJ Food Rocks on Instagram. And Molly is at Molly Matiny on Instagram. This episode was edited and mixed by Adam Noecker. This has been an Ampliverse production. You can find our show page and more information at theampliverse.com. If you'd like to send us your own takes on the movie we just watched, reach out to us via email and we might read it aloud on the show. Our email is showgaysmoviemusical@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to help others find the show. And now, as always, the show must go on, so stick around to hear what we're going to be watching next episode.
Lounge singer Dolores Van Cartier always wanted to be a star performer.
Nothing you can say can tear me away from my God.
But tonight, she's going to become a star witness.
Hey, is there a problem?
I've never seen anybody killed before.
If you testify, I'm gonna put you in the last place on earth if Vince would ever look for you.
She's an ideal prospect for rehabilitation.
Absolutely not. That is not a person you can hide. That is a conspicuous person designed to stick out.
Look at me. I'm a penguin.
I'd like to offer a great big hi there and hello to Sister Mary Clarence.
This stuff is terrible. It tastes like... There are 3 vows every nun must accept. The vow of poverty, the vow of obedience, and the vow of chastity.
I'm out of here.
Hey, sister, we expecting any more of your friends? This turns into a nun's bar. I'm out of here.
There's got to be something around here that I can do that's not going to chip my nails or annoy anybody.
You will join the choir.
The choir?
We're terrible.
This is going to be hell.
Tell me about it.
We can rock this place.
What if I forget the words?
You're going to go straight to hell.
We could cut a demo. You're a pioneer.
She ain't no nun.
You have corrupted the entire choir.
I was thinking more like Vegas, you know, get some butts in the seats.
I'd rather sing than do anything. It's better than ice cream. It's better than springtime.
Better than sex. No, I've heard.
Sister Act.
We're always going to be together.
That's what Diana Ross said.
Discovering voices, building worlds. The Ampliverse.